have no idea where this will lead us, but I have a definite feeling it will be a place both wonderful and strange.
Hello, and welcome to the wonderful, strange Twin Peaks Logcast.
Tell me, who are we, boo-boo?
I was going for Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, okay. I thought we were both going Yogi Bear.
I'm Kalil, and with me today is the umbrella drink to my distress, Donna. See, that was what I was going for.
Yogi the Bear.
That was
yes.
Yogi the Bear.
That
Yeah.
is
Before
Yogi the Bear.
I was doing Sylvester Stallone.
Fantastic.
Often confused.
Oftentimes, two popular figures, oftentimes confused. Overall, I am proud to be here, especially to be a fancy umbrella drink, so I think I will accept this compliment. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I am also happy to have you here for episode 22, Slaves and Masters. The thing that confuses me is it's plural, because I know of one slave and one master, arguably, but I'm just, like, stretching my mind to make this title mean more than what it does.
No. It can fit. Like, we do have some themes inside there. It just also is very interesting with the Confederate angle we have been faced with.
Hadn't even thought of that.
Oh, seriously?
That's unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah, no.
I was just thinking of Wyndham Earl and Leo, but...
No, there's Wyndham Earl and Leo. We can consider as Josie Packard as well as...
Mr. Thomas Eckert?
Mr. Thomas Eckert, correct. We can also think of how one could be basically driven to action, similar to how Sloane would to good old Evelyn. So, no, there can be this dynamic that I can see in this episode, so I think it's... an okay title.
Now I can't get the actual slavery thing out of my mind,
yeah,
though.
and that's the thing that's on the forefront.
And we don't even have to blame the original writers of the episode, right? These titles were added after the fact. I think it was the Germans. Someone did this. Someone
did this.
when they were airing this, they did it.
You should just say the people who actually did it, because now you have just blamed entirely Germany, and this is not a good look for the podcast.
It's fine. It's German listeners. It's not our fault that your country did this. It's fine.
No.
I don't know.
At least I love you, Germany. I don't know about Kalil.
This episode is written by Harley Payton and Robert Engels.
Fantastic.
The two of the all-star writers of the series. It was directed by the actress Diane Keaton.
Okay.
So she is most known, I guess, from being the female lead in Annie Hall, as well as being, I believe, the wife in the Godfather series, 1 and 2. I believe is what's going on.
So clearly we have to also get Annie Hall and The Godfather reviewed on the Twin Peaks Logcast to make a complete spectrum of everything connected to Twin Peaks.
I'm going to be honest here and alienate some of my listeners. I'm not really that big of like a Woody Allen fan. Like in person, he's done some questionable things and been questioned appropriately for those questionable things. Mm-hmm. But like Annie Hall's, it's fine. It's like... It's like that pie I gave you today.
Kalil attempted to give me a cherry pie, and it was certainly no. That pie was an experience, but not in the positive affirmation. This was the Leo Johnson of pies.
It was the Woody Allen of pies. And while most of Diane Keaton's directing credits were for like made-for-TV movies and like a couple episodes here and there for like China Beach, and there's like this CBS school break special. No idea what that is. Could be good. Don't know. She also did make 2 movies. She directed a movie called Unstrung Heroes in 1995, and then a movie called Hanging Up in 2000.
Okay.
I haven't heard of those. I haven't seen them, so I don't know much about them.
But
this isn't her only directing credit. Mm-hmm. So Death Masks. The Log Lady, for those who have been graced by the intro. Again, if you watch it on like Netflix or something and you're missing out on the Log Lady intros, look them up. I think they're on YouTube. They have to be. I haven't even done any evidence, but I haven't done any research for this evidence, but they have to be, right? They have to be. Legally, maybe, possibly.
Maybe legally,
Check them out if you can.
Indefinitely.
Because they do add something to the episodes. Okay. And this particular episode, we get the Log Lady talking about the death masks. She asks, is there a reason for a death mask? In death, the muscles, so relaxed. Wanted to kind of do some speculating with you on what we think this intro is doing.
Okay. Speculate away.
So, like, the most obvious thing, right, is the actual, like, literal mask that we see at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Where it's illuminated from underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Which a very nice mechanism whatever they ended up using, like when it's lifted, you can see something slide from the back, but it's so seamless that it just makes it look like it dims out.
Those trained fireflies are so good.
It is fantastic. I enjoy the effect deeply. I also enjoy the fact that Kalil, I ended up watching this episode first alone, and I ended up like, that's the first image on the Blu-ray that you see going into the episode of the glowing eye death mask.
So we have the reference to the death mask and the Log Lady intro, and I don't know, would you call the mask that Cooper lifts up a death mask?
Yes.
Okay, why so?
It seems to be the recreation of a face, and I imagine that with the themes we got throughout the episode, with the various white attire that has been going around, having a white mask to potentially represent the lifeless face of a loved one would be
Caroline?
fitting. Carolyn, actually. Caroline.
Carolina? Caroline?
Yep, all of these Cooper will likely pronounce because there's no definitive way to say this name.
Right. So do you think that's what the Log Lady intro is going for? I think is referencing that mask.
I think that it is, as far as this goes, I feel that the Log Lady intro is still tied to Lynch in a way of just musings, if you will, whether it is production-based musings or just thematic musings. And I think that this is the latter. This is going...
More that meta?
Yeah, more, somewhat meta, yes.
Okay.
But kind of like having something that's left behind by someone, but there is nothing to represent the person, but still enough of a curiosity.
Yeah, that was kind of what I wrote too, is that it's almost he's talking about studying the death of Twin Peaks. And again, maybe we're just reaching here a little bit, but the Log Lady says, quote, "A death mask is almost an intrusion on a beautiful memory, and yet who could throw away the casting of a loved one? Who would not want to study it longingly as the distant freight train blows its mournful tone?" I don't know about you, Professor, but especially that last part, all I can think of is like the first lines in the entire show where Pete, before discovering Laura Palmer's body, he's like, "A lonesome foghorn blows."
I think
that's very similar to the wording the Log Lady just used.
I don't know. I think that using trains as the thematic of like someone leaving off on a grand stop at the end of their journey is enough to say that this is just to push to the ideas with characters or just with people in general.
But Laura was killed in a train car. I mean, like, just saying, you couldn't have picked a more apt situation. It's directly bringing to mind the first line of the entire show, and then two, the location of the principal inciting incident of Laura's death. So it's hard for me not to take this to be David Lynch, after the fact of the show airing, talking about Twin Peaks Season 2 post-Leland reveal as almost being the death of Twin Peaks, and it's sort of this conflicted feeling where it's like he feels like he's watching something, the current version of Twin Peaks, it's intruding on the beautiful memory, and yet he also doesn't want to throw away that beautiful memory too. So I'm sensing like a mixed tone on the current state of Twin Peaks. As a lot, what's weird is that whether it's on purpose or not, a lot of these Log Lady intros can be easily read as like David Lynch slam dunking on the show, and if it's not on purpose, because I don't even think it's us reaching that far. Because I mean, like I said, that's clearly the similar language to what's happened at the beginning of the show.
Yes,
and the idea of studying something that died and a memory that's been like distorted or hurt. I mean, come on.
I do you know much about David Lynch's personal feelings? Has he spoken out outside of the show?
We talk a lot,
okay.
David and I. And when we talk, he says some things, I don't want to reveal anything. Actually, he writes in a little diary format, kind of like Harold, and I just keep it, and I read it sometimes.
Does he write in all caps?
No.
Kalil!
He actually writes in beautiful cursive.
Okay. Beautiful.
Those little doodles on it. Really pretty doodles. Yeah, we're suspicious a little bit of David Lynch with the Log Lady intros, and it seems that finally, perhaps a little too late into the show, people are starting to get suspicious of Josie outside the Packard household. We get some interrogation-y, questioning moments.
By the way, there is something fascinating.
Josie rubbing the wood?
With red nails. Red nails seems to be a theme inside this episode. The color red is just very nice recurring thing. But there is specifically, if you look closely onto the... You don't really even have to look that closely. On the shot that first shows her nails when being revealed, her hand is outstretched, and there's this little, what I assume to be a milkweed beetle, crawling across like the overall desk-like area that has somehow made its way into the home.
I think I blocked that out from my visuals because I'm terrified of giant beetles.
I can't remember if it is beetle or bug.
I mean, anything like that. If it has 6 legs, I probably hate it.
Why?
Because they're gross and scary and ugly.
For any
And they
other
mean me harm.
For any other viewers who dig entomology, overall, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what the heck is up with this beetle.
And I'd like to dig a hole and put all the beetles in that hole and then bury the hole.
It is.
I'm going to bury the hole.
Don't bury the hole. But I don't know. I'd like to know more about milkweed beetles personally, but I couldn't find that much. So
You're not going to comment on the Josie rubbing the wood as like an obvious like
again,
sexual metaphor?
It looked very much like she was reaching out to the beetle more so.
No, she was like stroking it. She was clearly like stroking Truman's ego, sexual advantage sort of ideas. That's clearly what we're going for.
Or maybe she just likes bugs.
Well, it was like ominous low sounds happening, whether it's the bug or the wood. Shortly after that, another refresher of Asian man killed.
Yep.
Always good to see that.
It is.
Okay, not in real life, but in fictional newspapers.
Yeah, from what they do end up discussing with Josie, apparently he had been shot 3 times. Doesn't say that in the article, so I don't know
The
where
article
they
says a lot of other things, though.
It says a lot of other things. And no, it seems that Josie is very confused and very scared at that moment. And
Do you sympathize with her?
no,
Why not?
because there's just not enough that we really get to see with Josie. Let's just say that it's very much like an Evelyn we don't get to hear much from. Like there's definitely some things going on in the background. There's definitely some crimes here. We just don't really get to know Josie.
So
No.
is Evelyn a better version of Josie?
I would not say better yet. I think that I need to see more Josie first.
Okay. Even though Josie we've seen for a lot longer.
We have seen
Just
for a
not
lot
recently.
longer. That's fine. Don't you have mysterious friends who tell you absolutely nothing?
I
Go
don't
off
have
to
any friends that
places
remind me
and
of-
maybe accused of murder?
Listener, if you have friends that remind you of Josie, run. You
Run.
might want to change your address.
Leave.
Don't tell them. There's witness protection programs that you might want to contact them. We see Truman reach his hand over to Josie's, and they have a little bit of a handhold session,
Just like how she was trying to hold the hand of the beetle, yes.
just like she was trying to stroke that wood. And shortly after that, we get Pete carrying in stuff from the dry cleaners.
Yeah.
He's been to see a Jeannie Pombalek.
Yep.
She's from Budapest.
She is from Budapest. The way that he kind of like talks about her kind of like makes me go, Pete, what's up? I know you're stressed, man, but this might be just taking like your stress a little bit too far, you know?
It took him 20 minutes to get the dry cleaning.
It did take him
Because
20
the only words he knew were like paprika and what was the other one?
goulash.
Goulash, yeah.
Yep.
Well, to be fair, if you only knew paprika and goulash, it'd be pretty hard to negotiate laundry terms. Could you imagine that's the 2 words you're left with? to try to
Kalil,
form an
I
argument?
do not want to have the discussion on the mysterious person we will never see, just another named character,
You don't
which
know
is
that.
an official character in Twin Peaks now, just
Listener,
like every other one.
Please do not spoil in the comments or emails any information that Jeannie Pombalek is in fact the main character of Twin Peaks: The Return. do not tell him this, okay? Don't tell him about how the Twin Peaks books foreshadow Jeannie's return.
Kalil,
Don't tell anyone.
Kalil, you're the one that sees like all this stuff. I would not. It would not reach me.
Don't tell me, because if you tell me, I might be tempted to tell him. So don't remind me. Don't let me say it. Okay? Don't let me do it. Stop me! Somebody stop me! So Catherine apparently has been running Josie to the ground, which at this point, I mean, I think most of us are like, yes, do it. I don't know, again, not really much sympathy for Josie. Catherine hasn't always been the most sympathetic character, but like lately, since her whole like stint as a confusingly Japanese, not man, she's been kind of, killing it. Kind of like, yeah, go queen.
I don't know if I encourage Catherine's actions. Again, so much in the dark in the Josie Packard circle.
That's fair.
Like for all of them.
It's a very awkward circle too.
I gotta say, unfortunately, like Catherine is kind of being a little bit extra pushy on Josie, probably for good reason,
Well,
mind you.
at least-
And at least Pete is there to look out for her.
And at least Catherine isn't someone who happens to have coats that have materials very similar to the crime scene of where Cooper was shot.
Yeah, Vicuna.
So I don't remember when we had discussed Cooper getting shot. If you had suspected Josie,
I did not expect Josie at the time, but it is similar. It is basically a match on the coat, like the materials for the coat. I do not know from material matching if someone else could have a similar brand of coat, and if those fibers would match, or if it is just specifically for 1-to-1 that coat. But Albert Rosenfeld does say that it's either like she's lending out her materials or we got some interesting things to kind of consider.
Well, and then it comes down to how much do you trust Albert's deduction technique, which so far I think he's been proving himself very competent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would just make a hasty assertion like that.
I don't think it would make a hasty assertion like that, but also there's this perspective he has on this very small town of 51,000 people.
Right.
That maybe there's just less likely people to carry around Vicuna coats like that.
That's fair.
We can also I think we can still consider anyone inside of the home, and that includes Pete, Catherine, as well as, let's say, for example, Andrew Packard.
Okay, I'm gonna spoil something here. Andrew Packard did not shoot Cooper.
What? No,
but
don't tell me that.
But here's the thing.
Spoilers.
Imagine if he did. Imagine if Andrew Packard, in like episode 5 or 6 of the show, he hasn't even appeared at all. It's gonna be like 20 episodes till he actually shows up. He just sneaks out of his little side room, the secret room, puts on Josie's coat,
just in case someone finds the fibers. You gotta be careful. Wear other people's clothes.
And
He's
then
smart.
Just goes into
He's
the
a
Great
smart
Northern.
man.
And what would be his motive to shoot Cooper? Why?
They didn't think of that yet. They didn't get the actor yet, so they couldn't show his face. They just showed the lower torso of a gloved hand.
Was Andrew just thinking like, this FBI agent might find out I'm not dead. That would ruin my plans of getting revenge. I have to kill the FBI agent and frame Josie by wearing her coat.
You said it, not me. So clearly Kalil is trying to like show that this is not the man. Convince me otherwise. So now it has to be Andrew Packard.
Listener, please do not leave any comments that remind me to tell him that in fact it was Andrew Packard who shot him. And so there's this moment where Eckerd does a phone call. And I don't know, maybe I misunderstood the situation, but it seemed like just like a freak chance of luck that Josie was the one who answered the phone. Because anyone in that household could have answered that phone. But thankfully,
No, Pete
Josie
answered
did.
the phone.
Oh, Pete did.
Yep, because that's when Pete was hearing the phone ring. He says, "Here, Cooper, hold this." That's when Cooper has the chance to look through the coat, look through the gloves and everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, yes, you want Josie? Oh, Josie!" And
What is that?
It is.
Who was that?
It is alternate reality Pete Martell.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet him.
And Josie then comes to the phone and gets a chance to chat. And that is probably where Catherine is also clued in that this is him on the phone, which we do get a later shot as they do talk that she does have her phone next to the receiver, which I assume is her silently answering the phone. So Eckerd isn't like put off like, oh, there's another person coming in on the call. Yeah,
it is really funny though too, because she says this like out loud, welcome to Twin Peaks, Mr. Eckhart. But she says it right next to a gigantic picture of a blue owl. And it's one of the many instances of owls in this episode where I don't know how you feel, Professor, but
the owls are everywhere.
I'm feeling like there's a certain point in which you start using your symbol too much, it loses meaning.
I disagree. I want the owls to be everywhere. I want them to be always watching. So I want to say owl in every scene, every place. I want one in the Palmer household. I want one in the Hayward household. I want 7
to be
inside
honest,
of the Ed, Norma, as well as Nadine household, or whatever living situation that will be. I want owls everywhere. Owls forever.
I mean, at this point, I think it's likely that there's owls in every single building in this town outside of, I don't know if we've ever seen any owls. Was it the Haywards I was thinking of? I don't think I've ever seen owls in the Haywards house.
Yet.
But like we've seen owls like pretty much everywhere. Yeah. I feel like they're just leaning too hard on their one thing.
I use my jokes not to deflect, but to engage. I am all for it.
Well, okay. Well, engage yourself with answering. Well, what point is it too much?
Never.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Why?
I want a room filled with owls. I want a scene with a room filled with owls. You do not know how much I genuinely want this. Because it is owls are such a fascinating, striking creature to put in with this mysterious idea.
I mean, like, so too, sparingly, in moderation.
No, I disagree. I don't think it has to be in moderation. I think it really depends on what intent you want to go with it. And as far as the owls go, yes, they appear a lot, but again, I feel like the owls are everywhere whenever it comes to this. Not to mention, owls are just very popular mystical iconography for places such as, like, whenever it comes to woods. If owls were magic, I'm all for the magic that Twin Peaks is bringing to me.
I'm going to disagree because I feel that it's a combination of, I feel like they're not really trusting the viewer very fully. Like, they often have the owl very prominent in the shot and like even acknowledge it verbally. And it's like every episode back to back, we keep getting more owls and owls and owls and owls. So it feels very heavy handed, but more than that, it feels a little bit lazy. Like it's their easy shorthand, like cheat sheet to like add ominous symbolism in this show without having to actually like do something new and innovative. It's like, oh man, we really want to foreshadow that this is a bad situation. We want to make it seem like Eckert's dangerous. What should we do? Add an owl. We really want to make sure that Windermere is very ominous and scary. Add some owls. And it just kind of feels like they're running out of ideas that aren't just recycling old ideas that we've already heard before. Great idea when it happened, but after like 20 owls, I'm kind of done with it. I want new things.
Honestly, if the Log Lady comes up and tells us a new creature that is also watching, maybe. But I think that overall I'm fine with the owls, simply because other than at this point, I'm not seeing much connection with the Packards and the Eckards with owls. But with every other point, I've seen a little bit of strange mystical nature that we kind of have a running theme for. So again, I'm less bothered by it myself for that reason.
One thing that I think should bother both of us is that when we had that phone call with Eckert, it had a close-up of his face, and his right eye was just the bloodshot red, like grossly red.
Like, as far as it goes, and excuse me, like, someone needs a little bit of eye drops. Do not
my gosh.
be so...
It was
so condescending.
really bad.
He does actually clear it up later in the episode, so it's not like a theme or the reason why he wears his glasses. He just really needed eye drops that morning.
Then they should have just did a different shot. I guess they were on such a tight schedule they couldn't, but it's
or
so weird.
Or it's just the theme of the red. Gotta get some red in there. And as we kind of like zoom out, and by the way, I love Thomas Eckert because he seems like a very he's an interesting, well-traveled man. He is someone that we know has been in China. He speaks with a brilliant sort of English tone. And there's also this point where he speaks with the secretary in Afrikaans, or if I'm pronouncing that right. Afrikaans, which is a South African tongue. And so, yeah, no, it shows that he has been quite around the world physically, maybe similar to Jerry Horn, and is probably a little bit more menacing than Jerry Horn.
Maybe. So, potentially ominous.
Potentially ominous, yes.
And I think part of what adds that, too, are the sort of visual accompaniments that Eckert is being given. One of the scenes we see where he's at the Great Northern Hotel, he is sitting down right underneath this framed painting of a bunny girl.
Yeah.
Notably not a cat girl, because we'll get to a cat girl later.
No,
but
we don't.
Bunny girl. Yes, we will. We
don't.
And there's a bunny girl, and she's in front of like a red curtain, right? Now, we've seen red curtains before.
We've seen red curtains, and we've seen people in outfits similar to that bunny girl. Considering
Great Northern is Ben's domicile, considering the attire of the woman, as you mentioned, One-Eye Jacks.
One-Eye Jacks, absolutely. No, but it also is like this level of like openness, and that's also very uncomfortable considering like his operation of One-Eye Jack and what it implies for these women. And
some of whom are underage.
Yeah.
Just girls, not even women.
Just randomly. Someone might recognize that woman from Twin Peaks and be like, hey, why is my daughter on your wall?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very bold move.
There's a lot of bold moves inside of the Great Northern as far as like choices.
It seems especially out of character for Ben, though, because if Ben is believed to be the one to put that up, he normally is very careful to hide his tracks. I wouldn't say he's the best at it, but he's managed to like stay hidden for so long with what he does, because he doesn't make it obvious. So putting that picture out there, it's a big picture too. It is not a subtle thing.
It's not. There's even a little lamp right above it just to emphasize it and show like, hey, look at this nice picture of this girl in a bunny outfit.
I really like the picture for the scene. I like the picture for the situation, but it does seem out of character if it's Ben. I like to believe it's Jerry that put it there.
Just on one of his visits, he sneaks up there. Ben has yet to notice it's on the wing that he never visits.
Yeah. Yeah, I really believe Jerry did it.
Fantastic.
And next to the picture, there's also a boar's head, which I mention now because it will come up later. I'm pretty sure it's a boar's head.
You're pretty certain? Okay.
I'm pretty confident.
Okay.
And I guess the reason why I think that the boar's head seems kind of significant is because later we get Eckart at night, and...
Can we appreciate Eckart with his entrance?
Oh, it's beautiful. It was like you open the door, there's a lightning flash, suddenly there's Eckart at the door wearing his like bow tie, and he used some eye drops, like you said.
He used some eye drops.
And when I was taking my notes, Professor had it paused, but then started rewinding it, but I thought he was slow-moing it forward. So I thought Eckert like
spun around
and then just closed the door again immediately.
I only need my entrance.
It was a funny idea to think he would just enter and then immediately close the door again.
No, it is great, but marvelous bow tie. He's
and
a man of style.
Catherine's not one to be one up. She's wearing the shimmeriest outfit ever made.
They are shiny people.
Shiny people. They quickly get to business here. Where she says that she found it appropriate that she would dine with her brother's former business rival, as you do.
Yes.
And it took only about a minute for her to start bringing up clear accusations that, like, yeah, you killed my brother. Not even, like, trying to duck around it, just, like, going right for it.
No, it's just like, so, why did you kill my brother? Like, was it for money, or was it for this? It's like, oh, no, you can earn those bucks. No, it was for love.
And Josie's just kind of standing there awkwardly holding the drink. Mm-hmm. But the main course...
The main course was Josie's hat. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
The main course
delicious.
Was pig head. Pig head.
There was the pig head, yes, but Josie was cutting Granny Smith apples, which was an excellent choice of dining fruit. It is a delicious sour fruit, the clearly best apple, and then proceeded with just a giant pig head surrounded by grapes. What is the balance in this meal, Kalil? Not to mention, they did not drink the wine, mind you, but the wine was not ready or getting prepared around the hour so that it could be just a nice thing to sip and drink and enjoy. You've got to air a nice red. You've got to get at least like half an hour of just like good oxidation going with that so that you can actually kind of like bring out the nice deliciousness that wine can offer. I am offended on multiple accounts other than the green apple here for the choice of food. And I want you, Kalil, to answer for that.
So there's a pig head. So pig head reminds me of the boar that Eckert entered. I don't know what that means. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but we got two pig heads. Man. So a boorish character, is that our best thinking?
That's currently, we might see more boars in the future.
Someone who is celebrating rather than steaming and stewing is Benjamin Horne, nearing victory when we see him this episode. And Johnny's here. We just talked about him last episode of the podcast. Johnny is there. Wow. Great to see him, huh?
Johnny again.
Johnny Horne.
Audrey's
brother?
I'm sorry, the long-forgotten family of the Horns is something that I cannot quite connect to anymore. Like,
he's the second most obscure member of the family.
He is.
Sylvia Horne, the mom.
Yeah,
I've only seen her once.
It seems that he is rocking away as, like, Ben is going deeper into his madness, having all of his employees kind of drumming away in the distance, while his son is rocking and laughing at almost like specific intervals.
Are you telling me that if you were one of the employees of the Great Northern, you wouldn't want to have front row seat to this? If I was being told, okay, you can either work at the reception desk today in the hotel lobby, or you can play drums and watch your boss have his mental breakdown, I know which one I'd pick.
Neat.
Are you telling me you wouldn't?
I don't know what I'd do. Like, I would put in my 2 weeks if, like, Ben was starting to pull this stuff.
I don't even know if it's been 2 weeks. We don't know how time works in this show. You might not even had 2 weeks yet transpire.
Then I'd leave, because I don't think I would really want to associate with Ben right now. And I don't think I want to associate that much with Jacoby with his methods. I think that they are very wild, and I think that I do not know how I feel about the young Johnny Horne. But it seemed like at the moment, like, we were getting to a new chapter in Johnny's life as he was putting that aside, especially for Laura's funeral. But it seems that he's going back into his headdress comfort zone.
Well, and it also adds an interesting element of, you got the cowboy and Indian 1800s motif going on here now, where Johnny Horne is dressed with a Native American headdress, while he's surrounded by his father, also dressed up in a caricature of that time period, roughly.
Roughly that time period. I
mean, obviously, Native American headdresses are not just one time period.
Yes.
But I'm saying that there's still this element of these are two people cosplaying weirdly from, like, centuries ago.
It's interesting to say.
And both are problematic.
Both are. It's interesting since that the madness is both on these characters of the Horne bloodline, so maybe there's like a percentage chance. This is what happens when you have a mental breakdown. You will just choose an era of like individual.
I mean, legitimately, there is an angle you could take that it could be genetic, passed down through the bloodline that just kind of like skips over some members and gets other members. That Johnny could have inherited this sort of tendency from his father, but his father was more latent. Whereas Johnny, we see it manifest. And that Johnny has experienced enough trauma from a young age to bring it out, whereas Ben had enough vices and distractions that he didn't see this until now. It's quite possible.
That is a very interesting and eloquent way to put it as I sit back and watch. One thing that I can say about Benjamin Horne in this state is that he certainly has presentation, and I think we're going to see more of that presentation later in this discussion.
He still has a way with words. I really appreciate that even in the condition he's in, he still has some clever, like, verbiage going on. He says, old honest Abe is about as useful to you as a spittoon cleaner in a whorehouse. Ben's, like, grasp of language and wording is as eloquent and poetic as ever. He just dropped Shakespeare for, you know, this.
As dirty as it sounds, I imagine that a spittoon cleaner would be very useful inside of a house of many pleasures, but hey, who am I to say anything like that? But hey, Benjamin Horne is an expert of houses of many pleasures, as we've seen with One-Eyed Jacks.
Very true. What do you think of Jerry's haircut, by the way?
I think it's nice. Yeah, no, it's a nice little shaved head. I don't really like what's going on inside of the head beyond the haircut.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Overall, it looks like Jerry is seeing some advantages of Ben's current state. He actually, like, I love the physical interactions of this scene, but he brings, like, Audrey around and kind of, like, pokes at her and dotes at her like she's a small child and says, you know what? There's some great things that we can do, some personal projects that I've been wanting to do, so a little bit of traveling that I can do, seeing as Ben has no real hold on his sanity and hence no real hold on his businesses and fortune and so on. So this is a great opportunity. And so that's when Audrey kind of responds to like this very childish, like, oh, boop, boop, kiss you on the forehead, hee hee, with just like taking his pipe and showing that, no, I am fully grown. I assure you that. And by the way, the will says, when fully grown, I get everything that Ben Horne has. And let me tell you, you're not going to touch that. No, the best part is that if you think that you're going to get away with trying to push this angle, we're going to probably be pushing you as what was the exact wording?
The only project he would be developing is selling baseboard heaters at the local cash and carry.
And he's just like, this is a terrible tragedy that happens to this man. Like, she has, like,
she's equipped for the situation.
She has a quip. She has the charisma that Ben holds. She is a true Horne.
I have three things to say in response to that. One is an observation, one is an opinion, and one is a question. So my observation, first of all, is that this does give us a clear insight to Ben's truest motivations, the best we can get out of this guy, because
you mean Jerry's true motivations?
No, Ben.
Oh, Ben.
No, Ben.
Okay.
Ben is a very duplicitous character, obviously, and it's hard to really know with characters like him what's sweet talk and what's genuine. But the fact that we do know the contents of Ben's will and that he would leave his most like prestigious titles and properties to Audrey does give us an indication that his love for his daughter has been sincere.
Yes.
And that's important to note because, again, with someone like Ben, it's hard to know what's genuine, right? But this is the clearest indication that if he didn't care for Audrey, she wouldn't be in the will.
Now, mind you, this is dependent on whether or not she's using some Horne magic of deception.
I think she's being
or
truthful.
if she being... Oh, okay.
I think she's being truthful. I think that if it was a bluff, it'd be too dangerous for her to make that bluff right now. I don't know. I maybe I shouldn't say too dangerous, but I genuinely am led to believe that it is the truth.
Yeah, Audrey is not known for putting herself in dangerous situations whatsoever.
That's a fair rebuttal. The opinion of my angle is that it seems like Jerry is kind of the creepy uncle. Like, some of the closeness is a little uncomfortable, how close he is to her. Not as bad as Bobby.
Not as bad as Bobby.
But it's still closer than most people want to be to their uncle.
Again, the way that he does dote and touch definitely is a lot for this age. But it does harken to reminders, just making me think like it's like dealing with a very young child. Just like, no, yep, Uncle Jerry loves you. Like, don't worry, I got a little handle on that.
I got a little bit more of like chauvinist, womanizing kind of presence going on.
And that can be completely
talking
fair.
Down to a woman, because I think that the way Jerry and Ben operate, aside from someone like Catherine, most of the women in their lives are pawns or sex objects.
Regardless, whether it's talking down like a child or talking her down like an object, Audrey certainly knows how to talk her way up, not only from gesture, but also making it clear, putting your foot down.
And then my third thing is a question for you. If the situations were flipped, do you think that Ben would try to take advantage of Jerry's incapacitation?
Jerry had nothing. Jerry is a business partner.
The situations are flipped. Okay?
So he also has the estate and everything?
He has enough things that Ben could have an advantage if he took them. Let's just put it that way.
I think that Ben would definitely try to spin it in a way he think is favorous. So I think that Ben and Jerry both think that they'd be doing each other favors. So I can see it. But I think that Ben would have better control of the situation, despite not having much control at all at this moment.
Okay. Also, going back to the creepy uncle thing, we should not allow Jacoby next to women as well, right? Like, Audrey's getting a little too close to Jacoby for what Jacoby is.
For the, amount of his practice that has also resulted in some very interesting advances on his clients? Absolutely not.
Like, okay, we never really technically talked about it. Like, what do you think Jacoby has done? Like, did Jacoby sleep with Laura?
Didn't he say that he did or he did not? I can't remember. I think that there was a point.
He did a lot of, like, almost. Like, he didn't quite make it clear, from what I understand.
From the way that he strokes his tie, as well as from the way that he overall talks and keeps the little tape on it, sure, you can say that there is a weird sense of, like, allure that has gotten to him, but it still shouldn't take away from how much that is taking advantage of a person in his profession.
Because I'm inclined, whether right or wrong, I don't know if the show is actually confirming that he slept with Laura. I think it's giving weird, creepy vibes.
I think that he's, like, even if he didn't sleep with Laura, the actions that he has really pushed and done really pushes a very bad element.
I almost feel like he fetishized her.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that he actually, like, sought out an outlet for those impulses. I think it's more that in his head, in his warped little mind, he made Laura out to be something, and he kind of almost had her as like a sort of figure in his imagination in his life that was larger. But I don't necessarily know if he acted on that in a way that would have actually been resulting in sex. I don't know. I think there's a sort of weird voyeuristic fetishization going on, but I'm not sure he actually slept with Laura, whereas Ben, we know, legitimately actually did.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think it's interesting we haven't really had a confirmation on that. We also, Jacoby must have slept with Lana, right? Because, like, the way he talked about spending the 24 hours with her, he was very clear to testify for her prowess, that she is capable of these things.
Again, he's doing his job, and I hope not, especially since I don't know about, like, what situation he set up with his wife, or if she knows about it. Because remember, Jacoby does have a wife. We see her once.
Have a spoken line?
No.
Does she know she's his wife? That's the first question. Like, for all we know, they don't even live. Like, for all we know, she lives in Hawaii. Just flew in for a week, and then she's back to where she was. Like, we don't have a clue what's going on.
If they've got a personal private setup where they're meeting with people, okay. But still, this is a patient.
Even if we have the open marriage idea, it's still violating patient, client confidence.
No, it is a dynamic. I'm sorry, Jacoby, but this is not how you meet your women.
And again, like, none of this says is like directed at Audrey as what Bobby's doing. Because, like, Bobby is like sniffing Audrey's hair in the background during these scenes.
Yeah, I had to make sure my coat didn't get taken by bikers, which is very strange that, bikers are stealing Confederate outfits, but, no, he's just buttoning up, gets really close and sniffs in on her hair. And this is, mind you, after the scene where he was like time is weird in Twin Peaks, but it is after the scene where like he was defending Shelley and saying, no, I can be around Shelley, help defend her.
Imagine being like the yesterday is when the Leo thing happened. They're already making moves on someone else again.
Yep.
And like, it's a really good thing for Bobby that Ben is so out of cahoots, because imagine if Ben was conscious of what was going on as like Bobby's snuggling up to Audrey over there. I think Bobby would be launched out of the window. Like, I think
there will be no Bobby.
So Jacoby says that they're pretty much ready to implement the Appomattox scenario,
which I didn't know if it was going to be a large risk or if we were just waiting for the Appomattox scenario.
Sure.
If he was just inside of his Jacoby lab and just testing it out before like being able to implement it, or if it's all about the weird timing of it all.
Yeah, because later in the episode we do get to see that scene. It wasn't that much later, presumably. And we get this legitimately nice painted backdrop that the office has been turned into. Yeah. Like, it's really looking nice, to be honest.
I love the fact that this looks like, I would say, high school play, including with some of the acting.
And the horse, it makes noises.
It does make noises. It's
which
impressive.
Which raises a lot of questions.
And the foreground has been covered in wheat. I don't know where they got all the wheat, but they got the wheat. Like, I haven't seen any farms in Twin Peaks yet, so I do not know how much wheat they had to import for this.
Maybe Jacoby just had some.
Just had some off to the
case.
It's Jacoby.
He's dealt with this
it makes
before.
sense.
He's dealt with this kind of thing all the time. So Audrey and Jerry briefly make a stint as the McLean daughter and father.
Yeah.
Bobby's returning to his bugle.
Yep. I love also that she's just like introducing herself as well as good old Jerry. And as these two different people, but there's also this point where like he's like, "And why do you have my sword, sir?" It's like, and they just run off the stage with each other. They didn't really need that much presence either. It was just like a fun introductions. I was just half expecting like him being so offended by taking the sword, he would just like demand a duel with Jerry.
Sure.
I think that would have been.
What if this would have been Jerry's death?
This could have been where Jerry died.
Who do you think would be held responsible, Ben or Jacoby?
Jacoby.
I would hope Jacoby. Honestly, speaking of Jacoby, he shows up in different glasses, not the red and blue. He's wearing the black little spectacles, and he is General Grant, there to surrender the North.
He looks very uncomfortable in his suit. He looks standing up back, and he's reading off his lines that he wrote his own, but he also had to like keep track of like reading off the right lines to get things moving.
He's nervous. He has stage fright.
Maybe so, but I do love the fact that like Ben has such. Again, that sense of flair that in mid-speech, he ends up dropping a Confederate flag between him as well as Jacoby.
Because what happens is that he asked Jacoby, do you remember the Mexican War? And Jacoby's like, it was a good war, I remember that. And then, Ben says, nonsense, drops the flag, as you mentioned. And he says that all wars are madness, disguised as the patriotic ventures of politicians too old and too cowardly to participate in them. Mm-hmm. So he gives like a weirdly like anti-war stance upon his victory, where he salutes those who fight in the wars, but ultimately he says there is no good war. There is no good fight, that it is all a bunch of nonsense being fought for politicians who actually won't participate themselves. Which is really interesting, because are we supposed to interpret that as a mouthpiece for any of the writers or the actual opinion of the show? Because having Ben Horn in a Confederate outfit saying your like morals is weird. But if that is actually what Ben thinks, that's also really strange too, because Ben is someone who in real life has always used people as middlemen to do his bidding without care of what happens to them. That was the whole thing with having like Leo and Hank do his dirty work.
And not to mention sending out Cooper, but also trying to double time Cooper.
So it's weirdly prescient, I think is the word I'm going to use here, that Benjamin Horn would give this complaint about the cowards who cause war and give decisions for others to fight.
It's certainly humorous.
From Ben.
It's certainly humorous because, as we will later on see, as they are surrendering the war, writing down the documents, and then, believe it or not, against all odds, it ends up working.
Yeah, they won the war. They won the Civil War.
Yeah. There is this, like, moment where, like, Ben falls down and Ben does return to his body. And he goes off believing that it's a wonderful dream, Wizard of Oz reference, yada yada.
I mean, so subtle, you'd never pick up on it.
Never pick up on it. I love it, though.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most overt Wizard of Oz things in the original Twin Peaks.
Yes. And there is, like, this moment where he was just so happy because he had a dream that he was Robert E. Lee, and against all odds, he won the war. So it looks like that he does have some like reverence to this man, that I feel that he is at least somewhat cognizant of this like ideal that he has hardly followed himself.
Well, it is interesting as well then, given what he has stated in the character of Robert E. Lee, we get this sense of someone who is clearly fighting on the wrong side, someone who is ultimately fighting to keep oppression and evil, yet someone who also seems to be portrayed as a courageous, brave individual just happens to be fighting on the wrong side. That seems to be the narrative that Ben's version is peddling, which is interesting if we look at Ben's character arc, putting himself on the bad side, putting himself on the losing side, but putting himself in the position of someone who is very revered and very courageous, and at least if we go by the last words on the nature of war, someone who actually sees through some of the lies that are happening. It's an interesting position he's putting himself in, full of gray morality, but also confidence and strength. It is a curious position. And when he wakes up and realizes what's going on, he sees the other people. He's like, what are you doing in those clothes? What's the joke here? I don't understand, guys. And everyone has like a legitimate, good-natured laugh. And it feels like one of the few feel-good moments Ben has ever been involved in. Like, not in the sense of, like, good for Ben, he won. No, like, good as in, like, everyone's kind of coming together and having a good laugh. Which is Whether it sells for you or not, I don't know, is another matter entirely, but I think it's interesting that that's the mood it's going for.
It sells me on the emotion. It's just hilarious that the feel-good moment that we get with Ben as he recuperates is the end of the Civil War where people have represented the Confederates to win. That was his Oz.
Well, it's also weird, too, going with the Wizard of Oz kind of comparison. The idea of the Wizard of Oz is that it's realizing there's no place like home, wanting to go back. At least, I haven't read the books. I know that things get weird in those books. But in the original movie, right, the Judy Garland one, there's that sense in which you want to go back home, the return to home, and kind of the journey to get back.
The return to Twin Peaks, yes.
Whereas,
which, by the way, every time someone returns to Twin Peaks or has a sense of returning to family or anything like that, Twin Peaks theme plays.
Yes.
But yes.
But that's what's interesting about this, though, is that I don't know if Benjamin Horne's Civil War fiasco was a returning.
No,
it's the sense of he wants to return to victory, I guess is the closest I can say. But it's not like he ever like has moments of consciousness where he misses his family.
Well, in truth, maybe he sees like these very large, near impossible odds when it comes to Catherine Horne. Catherine Horne won and absolutely decimated this man, completely broke him, and got everything away from him. The fact that like his dream world, he has won this very uphill battle and he came out victorious means that he might have some of that Horne confidence return to him as well. It's not only just like Ben Horne coming back home, but it's also just him coming back to himself on how Benjamin Horne would be.
Do you know who else is coming back confidently to their Horne home?
Who?
Edward.
Oh, what?
In bedroom.
What?
The bed.
What does that have to do with Horne
Under
home?
the sheets with Norma.
Okay.
You get it or no?
I hope I get it, but I'm not going to pry further because it's out of fear of what we're going to describe to the listener. Anyway.
So we get Edward. Why do I call him Edward?
We get Edward as he sits upon his bed with his loving partner, Norma. Or what would be the longer form of Norma?
Nomenclature. And Ed says, it's been 20 years, babe. One day we're talking about a graduation party, and the next day we're here.
What?
We were open every day, so I wouldn't have any other life. No birthdays, no 4th of July, no Christmas.
Let's not dilute this down with funny voices, because genuinely, this is a very touching scene that I find between these two. They have basically really pushed themselves out of each other's lives, basically like had this sense of like blankness for so long that it just feels like time has jutted to this moment back to where they felt probably happiest instead of stuck in like horrible scenarios. In fact, Norma used her diner as a complete distraction. And one day she was even willing to push past the distraction, got Ed a nice little bolo tie, and was ready to deliver to him on Christmas. And she's like, she doesn't know why she couldn't go in. I have a very strong feeling it's the fact that he's a married man with his wife, Nadine.
I just want to see the flashbacks where Hank is like coming home with a Christmas tree, and Norma's like, no, we don't celebrate Christmas here, Hank. Hank's like, why? I got all these dominoes to put on the tree and everything. And Norma's just like, I'm sorry, I can't confide the real reason, but we don't celebrate Christmas, the 4th of July, or birthdays here, Hank.
And I feel sorry for James because clearly getting out of like his tough time in his personal home, he just goes over to visit Ed, who has just a week filled with lasagnas, as he keeps on like reiterating the Monday throughout Christmas week.
Yeah, and also can I just comment how incredibly burnt Edward keep calling him Edward. Why?
Please tell me more about Edward.
And my notes say Ed, but I keep saying Edward. How incredibly burnt Ed looks. He's like orangey red. Like his complexion is so different in this shot. I don't know what lighting they had going on.
I don't know, but
did he not seem more orange to you?
No, Edward seemed perfectly fine with his complexion.
And he basically says like, oh, he wishes that she'd always been where she belongs, in my house,
in my bed.
And
let him in my bed.
You really like that part.
In my house. Like if you put those in any sort of order, it just makes a hilarious statement. Yeah. Again, I love like the future performances of Ed just because I think that they are very intense, and I think that is fitting for his emotion at the moment. Oh yeah, absolutely. He is very much riled up, as opposed towards just like hugging James with like an absent voice.
I'm so sorry. That was Donna when he did that.
No, it was Donna. You are correct.
It was Donna. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. James just enters the house and then he says 2 words and then leaves. I don't know if we ever see him hug truly. Nadine shows up, and at first Norma's about to like, try to hide or leave or something. And, Ed's like, no, we may as well tell her right now.
We may as well tell her. And she just like runs.
Nadine just removes the door.
She removes the door. By the way, this room, I don't know if the stuffed animals came before and after. Collect stuffed animals.
We gotta talk about this, right? We don't often see the bedroom at this household. This is, I think, our first time really getting this kind of a glance at it. So I think it's interesting because it does feel very specifically designed.
Yes.
You've got all the big stuffed animals. The biggest one is a stuffed dog. There's a bunny, a flamingo,
Oh,
a
the
penguin,
big old floppy dog. He's so cute, but he's also staring at the bed.
which, not to kink shame. That's all I'll say. We got a lot of stuffed animals. Then there's the vanity.
We got the murder step going down to the bed.
Yeah, there's like a weird ominous like step into your bedroom.
This seems like a home that one would retire in, but also they would fully retire as they're trying to get up to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
This is the room that was based off of any sort of need for life alert.
Oh no. I was just going to talk about the vanity has the real spiritual life alert. Mother Mary. God's original life alert. It's just like Paul McCartney once said. Paul McCartney once said, speaking words of wisdom, life alert. And like the room has got like pink walls and blue walls, which feel very like
very
baby
pastel.
room.
Yeah.
Very baby room. There's a floral pattern going on with the quilt on the bed as well as the wall behind the bed. So it's kind of got a floral pastel kid room vibe. And then the weirdest element for me, weirder than everything else, are the two pictures that are by where the door used to be.
Yeah.
Which, before we get into my stupidity here, and I will acknowledge it's silly, the two pictures are of these two young-looking girls, right? I don't know how old, like 5.
It's very stylized little girls, yes.
They feel like old paintings. Like this is from the show was in the 90s. These paintings are made in like the 50s. Right? They're old. And then like there's black hair girls. We have no clue who they would even be if they are based on any real person.
Yes.
And my problem psychologically is that I think that the bottom one's a cat girl. And I'm trying to convince the professor this, and he will not believe me.
It's a big bow. It is a big bow. There were big styles for those like old-time paintings or old-time things. Listen, listeners, like let's put aside like Kalil's anime prejudice aside of cat girls.
I'm not prejudiced.
I'm very familiar with
cat
this.
Cat girls deserve human rights too.
And
animal rights. They get both. Animal rights and human rights. In fact, I am a cat girl exceptionalist.
I think I have to I feel guilty every time I look at something styled like this. Whenever I see like paintings like that.
Why do you feel guilty?
Because
did you rob an art gallery or something?
Here's something to admit. We make anime reference. This is like Professor Life reference. There was like this bedroom that I would rest in, and I would think I would get the same vibes looking at these paintings. But growing up at my grandmother's house, she was very talented. She had like clay kilns inside the basement. She made these brilliant looking dolls. These nice little dolls that had like weighted mechanisms in the eye. So when you laid them down, their eyes would close. You lift them up, their eyes would open.
The horrifying ones.
And there was a room filled with like 100 of them in little glass cabinets, and all of them were facing the bed for the most part. And I was about 5 years old, and they scared me so much. My grandmother actually got rid of a lot of them because of that, like how much of a reaction me and some of the other kids had. And I feel so bad because, again, brilliant, talented person. These were like very great crafts, handmade, and I feel guilty about that to this day.
Should not.
And that emotion resonates in those paintings.
No, they're terrifying. They're uncanny and they're terrifying.
They're craft, and overall, I am glad that people have that talent. And I feel that there's talent in those paintings.
God made the mistake of making spiders. Humans made the mistake of making porcelain dolls like that. You could argue how beautiful the spiders are, and I'll smile and I'll nod. Yes, they're amazing. The silk and the webs, wow. But I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to go fund them.
Well, listeners, whether you are raising spiders or making brilliant dolls, know that at least I support you. So thank you very much for what you do.
Keep them away from me. I'm going to put you in the hole. I'm going to dig for all the bugs. I'm going to put you with the bugs in the hole. Okay? With your dolls. It's a giant hole. But yeah, no, the bottom picture is a cat girl, right? So it's a black hair girl, and he thinks it's a bow. I think it's cat ears. Anyway, back to the more pressing matter. Nadine rips the door off its hinges and like witnesses.
It's not even rip. She just like casually picks it up.
Yeah, the way you might take like a lid off of like a little tray or something. She walks in with the door and she sees Ed and Norma in the bed together.
And she goes ahead and just runs to the bed and just like scoots in on the outside. As like Norma is clearly uncomfortable, like trying to cover up, and just like Nadine just starts talking about like how she ended up getting disqualified and only got second place because she found like a move was illegal. Not only like by the end, but like wouldn't like they be going over this in practice? Like, Nadine, you should not do this, or
I don't know if Nadine is fully conscious of what's being told to her at any given moment in the state she's in.
And when you're disqualified, I didn't realize you could still place
for other reasons.
I didn't realize she could still place with just disqualification. Like, you do something illegal. I imagine
it must
that's
be just like a one-rank penalty. It's not really a disqualification, then it's a penalty. This is somehow that she got into the tournament, right? Like, this has worked. Whatever
she got into
lobbying
finals.
that wrestling coach, whatever lobbying he's doing.
Like, there
incredible.
are many children who have lost in the wake of Nadine because she made it all the way to the finals.
They might have lost their lives in the
Potentially.
wake of Nadine. And then Nadine says, "I owe you an apology, Norma. I mean, I really pounded Hank, and I'm sorry." And I mean, the choice of pounded while looking at the woman who slept with your husband.
No, she apologizes, goes, and gets up from the bed and walks to the door with her trophy in hand. Is like, by the way, I know about you too. And which is funny because it's almost like in the context of like, this isn't the part that like brings it up, but some ethereal other sense is like,
right.
I have a hunch about you too. And
it's really, really okay because I don't have to feel so guilty about me and Mike. I can't tell you about it, but it's really, really serious.
It is really, really serious. I don't.
You see, guys, you can go ahead and do whatever you want. I'm completely cool about this.
As she like creaks the head of the trophy.
Really?
Like I'm curious on whether or not like that is just like some quirk that she's just like playing around with the head, or if there's like the inner Nadine within being like, no.
I really, really enjoy that scene because the humor, obviously, but the way in which the kind of ambiguity is happening, because we know that in the current state that she's in, Nadine's super strength, she doesn't really like have full awareness of it. Like, she obviously intended to beat up Hank to save Ed. But like the door off its hinge, she didn't seem to cause that on purpose.
Yeah.
She just kind of like, turned the doorknob and the door came off. So with the doll, it leaves it open to interpretation. Does she genuinely have no problem with it, but she's just kind of messing with it? And as she's messing with the thing, it just comes like, because that's her strength.
Yes.
Or like you said, is it the inner voice, like kind of yelling at her from her subconscious or whatever, like, no, you do have a problem with this? Or is it more surface level and Nadine does have a problem, she's conscious of it, she's just doing the high school teen girl thing of like passive aggressive, no, it's fine, it's all good, it's all good.
It's brilliantly layered, but I gotta say, I really dislike like Ed's choice onto this. Like, no, let her come in, let her find out. It's like, Ed, like, Norma's uncomfortable with that. Just get some clothes on, sit down, get some pancakes going, and saying, like, Nadine, we need to talk.
Would you rather try to stop Nadine from entering that room in the state that's going on right now?
I would want to stop Nadine, because if Nadine went through and it went with the opposite reaction, there would not be an Ed and Norma. They would be like paint on the wall. It would no longer need this pastel color.
Shelley, later, we get one more scene with Norma. Shelley is, what?
I'm just remembering that, like, Norma apparently has, like, 2 giant ice cream cone statues, because in one shot, we see the ice cream cone statue on top of the ice cream machine, and the other, in the series, she's just carrying this ice cream cone machine, gets on her hands and knees and starts scrubbing.
Well, and my notes here said wiping the mice cream, which is oddly appropriate because it is a squeaking sound when they wipe it.
Squeaky ice cream cone, then, wherever it came from.
So Norma's wiping the mice cream, and then Shelley comes in, and then Shelley also starts joining to wipe the mice cream from the other side. And they have a conversation, a little heart-to-heart, very quick little conversation where Shelley agrees that she's going to start working at the Double R again, like starting that day. And at that point, Truman comes in. Shelley awkwardly leaves, realizing it's probably not good to be around for this. And Truman tells Norma that Hank is going to jail for the attempted murder of Leo Johnson. He's pretty sure he can keep Hank away forever. And thank goodness, right? No more of that guy.
I mean, will we? When was the last time we saw? I know we took a little bit of a break, but I genuinely think it's been like, I
think it's been like 4 episodes because he got beat up by Nadine. The problem is our break, right? So I think it might have only been like 2 or 3 ago, but it feels like forever.
It feels like about a year or two, and that's around when we started the podcast.
But even when Hank was around, he wasn't a power player. Like, he hasn't been a power player in a long time.
He has not. He has not been a power player. He has shown a little bit of power. He has shown some influence, but I wouldn't call him a power player.
We see Bobby over at the police station being questioned about the events of the night prior. And Truman has to ask the question, Bobby, what were you doing at Shelley's place?
I don't see the point of this questioning. Like, I don't see why
I
you're
just
bringing
find
this
it really
up.
funny because it's easy to forget that this is a secret, like that people don't know that Bobby and Shelley are together because they've been living with each other for so long and so many episodes that for Truman to not know that is really strange.
I'm surprised that with his attitude that Bobby was pushing this whole entire interrogation, he didn't slam the table and snap a few times.
Yeah, I think Harry's kind of been subdued. He's been declawed. To be honest, this is a very passive version of Harry.
He's dealing with a child that he already is annoyed with. He knows what he's getting into, but at the same time, he's just trying to get information. He's done with Bobby.
You sure it was Hank? And Bobby's just rotating his head around like a weirdo, playing with a lighter, just like he did at the funeral for Laura. Absolutely.
Bobby has been a bobblehead this whole scene.
No, the bobblehead was more of the Bobby Briggs button it, and then he did his bobblehead mode, and then he kind of shuffled out of the room a little bit after.
He's been wobbly at the very least. If I can't say he's bobbled, I can say he wobbled.
To which Albert replied, "Get a life, punk."
Yeah, no, get a life, punk. He's back.
He's back.
Albert is back. Albert's back. Back again.
Who made that song?
No,
I'm calling you out on this. Who made that?
Why do I need to know these things? Why can't I just say this is a pop culture thing at one time?
Proper credit to an artist.
Neat, do it, Kalil.
Eminem.
Oh, okay.
Shady's back. Tell a friend.
Oh, neat.
I don't even like Eminem.
No, I know him from the musical Be More Chill. He wasn't in it, but there is a plot point where Eminem dies.
You can't just know it from the song you literally just said.
I haven't checked out the artist. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
It was a fun joke.
It was fun.
The off-Broadway run is better than the Broadway run.
Well, that's good to know. So Albert's back, and he
Back
slaps
again.
down this noir gangster flick pic of Wyndham Earl from 50 years ago.
Yeah, no, I was...
Ridiculous photo.
He clearly was getting ready to speak to the cartel about something that involved probably drugs, because, there's a drug theme in Twin Peaks.
And Albert then does this great impression of Gordon Cole. That Gordon Cole, I'm worried about Coop. Great impersonation from Albert's part.
Loud voice. Great job.
Great job. And we find out some information about Wyndham Earl's doings, that there have been gift wrap packages being sent all around, that they're harmless, but they look like mail bombs. But inside them is feminine wedding clothing.
In fact, I know it's common, but I still want to make a point that there is a very thick theme to white, and those items were a white veil, a white garter, a white pair of white slippers, a white pearl necklace, and a white wedding dress.
So it's just a typical wedding outfit.
It is specifically a white wedding outfit,
which is
especially down to the white pearl.
That's
it
very
is the
common.
most common, but it's important here, okay? I've got to go into my conspiracies later, but know right now, it's important that it was all white, all everything, including, later on, we will get to the last item he delivers, which is also specifically white. So, Kalil, do not downplay the importance of this color.
Okay, well, technically it's also a color and more of a shade.
Ah!
Also, intriguingly, we find out the locations of which those packages have been delivered: Springfield, Kansas City, Lawton, Dallas, and Jackson.
Now, listeners, Kalil specifically told me to write down these locations.
Yes.
I had them at the ready, thinking, oh, no, he's too busy. I'll write them down for him. That's his specific event.
Always keeping you on your toes, Professor.
Yeah, I could say things right now.
So, if you were to take the letters of those, and Kansas City, you could do KC. I'm just going to do the K because that's what Professor thinks should happen.
Yeah, because it's
that's
like
SKLDJ, which I think is an acronym for Space Cooper with a K, Leo Da Johnson. Now, alternatively, you could do Leo Dale Johnson, like Cooper Leo Dale Johnson, like Dale Cooper mixed in, but I think it's more of Leo Da Johnson. But you can also substitute any J in Twin Peaks. There's a lot of J's.
Well,
I'm nervous about meeting them all.
Believe what you will. I think that it's just so that I can make a bigger C shape, which is humorous.
Albert notes that these old locations are suspicious, but he believes that despite everyone being invited to the party, something tells him that Wyndham Earl will only dance with Coop.
Nice and considerate, I guess.
Nice and considerate. We get a musical change while Coop is by the window, and Albert finds this is appropriate time to comment on Cooper's attire. He says, replacing the quiet elegance of the dark suit and tie with the casual indifference of these muted earth tones is a form of fashion suicide. but call me crazy. On you, it works.
I missed you, Rosenfeld. I missed this part of you.
Which is so weird because it is the same writers.
It is.
As last time. Episode 16 was the last time we saw Albert, I think.
Yes.
And that was the one where we were both kind of like, that doesn't feel like Albert, right? So kind of remind, because it's been a long time, to remind the listeners why, Albert was just acting completely like alien.
He was alien. He was very absent from the role. And even with a line that could have been a Rosenfeld line when all the guys were all together, it was given to someone else. I think it was Truman or something like that.
The lines that felt most distinctly Albert weren't said by Albert. It just didn't feel like he had his character. Here he does feel more like that character, at least to Professor. I'm not sure how I feel, but Professor's pretty confident on it.
Like that last line, it is that like a compliment mixed with like a very blunt, what some would consider as an insult.
That's true.
I say that that's the case when he like looks straight at someone who he has not gotten acquainted to as much, like with Truman, where some respect has been drawn. He just immediately just like lashes straight out at them, and that was Bobby. Just get a life, punk, as he's like going out the door.
Yeah, he is back more in form. But what's so strange about this is that episode 16 and this episode were both written by Harley Payton and Robert Engels. The only difference is that episode 16 also had Mark Frost, which leads to the logical conclusion that, I want to be clear, Professor and I are not saying this. It's just the facts are saying this.
There's no facts.
Is that Mark Frost is bad. That's just the facts.
No.
It's not our opinion.
No.
It's not our opinion. This is just looking at the trends. Okay, looking at the 2 episodes.
No. When you throw darts at a billboard, not all of them can be bullseyes.
At a billboard?
Yeah, like at a billboard. Like
a dartboard?
Dartboard. Yeah, the board with darts.
Billboard is like the thing outside of the street. Okay.
I've been throwing darts at the wrong thing, so.
If you manage to hit it, that's incredible. No. I mean it in joking, but it is kind of funny that Harley Payton and Robert Engels, same writers, but it comes across so much better with Albert here. I don't know what happened. It's easy to poke fun at Mark Frost's role here, and part of me unsarcastically actually does wonder if that was part of the issue. Not because of Mark Frost is a bad writer, by no means. He's an excellent writer. There's things he does very well, although I do take issue with some things later. But the thing with Mark Frost, though, is that I think sometimes he can be a little moralizing. I think there's a sense in which the things that have his hand on them sometimes feel a little bit guided, a little bit more like there's the author's viewpoint shining through, a little more moralistic. And I feel like that's what hurts Albert.
I think that there's also an argument that can be made, if I'm thinking of the correct episode at this time. It's like some people had to just be present. They had to be there in attendance. They just couldn't do much with them during the amount of time that they had, or chose not to.
Yeah.
Because like there was like all those people inside the roadhouse. And I'm like, okay, why the hell would you like bring them all here? Like, I guess you're just trying to like choose amongst them, but you were really suspecting like this person to do this?
I still feel like even with that, though, it's a poor excuse because you have a little bit of time with Albert. Make his few lines that he has feel good for his character. Like in a situation where we only have like 5 lines, those better be good 5 lines. So I feel like there was maybe a rushed element to play it there. Anyway, moving forward. Despite how Professor and I might have wished that we could have taken a wood chipper after the script with Albert in episode 16, this episode does feature an actual wood chipper.
I mean, that's what happened. Like, he lost all his lines. They went through the wood chipper, and they're gone.
We get this slow-mo, like, wood chipper saw kind of visual, followed by the wooden flute of Windermere as we go into his... That's what I believe it was.
Okay.
As we go into Windermere's cabin. We get a better look at the interior since it's not darkness this time. And quite an interesting interior that it is. We have an American eagle on some kind of skin on the wall. We have indoor rocks to perch upon and play your flute.
Yeah.
And Windermere's wearing his comfy PJs.
Just like straight up like tan onesie, which by the way, I enjoy the fact that specifically the American eagle, a very like representative of the United States and almost like a sense of like a government like bird-like figure, is very big, prominent, and present right in center shot.
Eagles are very bird-like, I agree. And inside Windermere's onesie, he's got a picture of Leo Johnson that he just like casually takes out.
The first reaction both Kalil and I had at the first time watching this episode, well, my first time, your eventual return to, was like, did he print out a Leo Johnson t-shirt? Did he have one made?
Which is funny because I've seen this show before and I still thought that, so it says a lot. And he's talking to Leo. We get our first impressions of what Windermere's like as a character and in his dialogue. And he's talking to Leo and he says, "I've removed the proverbial thorn from your paw. Leo the lion." He's just kind of having fun with him, right? Having a good old time.
Yeah, one does.
as one does when you invite someone over and you ask them to obey you, right? And you start talking about how in 13th century Japan, the samurai were stripped of their weaponry, but they found that the bamboo of their shakuhachi flutes made for an excellent bludgeoning device.
And
as
just
Windermere
like
just starts viciously
smacking-
beating to the side of Leo's
Yep,
head.
left and right, just
Right
like
around him.
it's basically that's a great tactic to just sort of distort someone and like just imagine like the pounding of those sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Both ears deafening you
With the visual of someone leering over you doing that.
with his little collar that he decides to exchange to Leo's neck.
This flute is an instrument of pleasure, as he puts the shock collar on Leo. He says he wanted to save the collar for an occasion, but Leo ruined that. Mm-hmm. Come on, Leo, eat your gruel. Yum, yum, purr.
Oh boy.
So what do you think of Windermere?
Well, by the way, I want to make a note of this, okay?
Yes,
He does
make a
like
note.
color itself is a shock collar that he
Yes.
sends like waves of like into Leo. Pain, that's the word.
Waves of You couldn't think of the word pain?
I cannot think of the word pain.
Oh, my
God, I got a
favorite
lot of
entry
things.
into the Metal Gear Solid series. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom. I remember that one, yeah.
Regardless, Phantom Oz or anything like that, I enjoy the tactics through a Mad Wyndham Earl, deciding that trying to treat Leo Johnson like a pet, manipulating him at any point that he can. He shocks him down and then treats him to this gruel that he has in a very loving manner. And there's just this very messed
I don't know
up...
if loving's the word I'd use for it. Playful?
Playful is a good one. I would say that he's treating Leo
Fake
like
affection.
a pet, like a
Yeah.
big old lion cat, which you could say that's loving. You could say that's playful. I do not know about the emotions of Wyndham Earl because he is currently the wild card at
Yeah.
the moment.
What do you think of him? I know we're going to have more stuff here to say about him, but like
We will have more
first
to say about him.
impressions, his way he speaks, his mannerisms.
Oh, the way that he speaks, as well as the way that he owns the stage, leaping around from place to place, and just being an animated figure. I think that the performance from the actor on First Impressions is on point. Like, especially with how reserved that we got him on the previous episode, and then we can see like his range that he can go for. No, this was fantastic.
Speaking of range, Truman is trying to shoot these darts at a dartboard.
Yes,
Not a
yes.
billboard, a dartboard.
A dartboard.
And he's failing to hit the bullseye.
He's failing to hit the bullseye on this black, white, and red lined dartboard. Yes,
i.e.
correct.
a normal dartboard.
A normal dartboard.
i.e. don't read into the colors too much. It's a regular dartboard. It'd be weird if it wasn't those colors.
Yep. But might I remind you that below this dartboard is a black and red dartboard with black and white pieces right below this. It seems that Truman is collecting quite the...
You mean a chessboard?
A chessboard.
You said a dartboard's underneath the dartboard.
There's a
How many dartboards does he have?
It's a dartboard with chess pieces.
How many billboards are in this room too?
shaped like a chessboard.
Speaking of the darts, midway through the conversation, it goes back to
Well,
that shot.
like after he's like discussing like who that one who was murdered was.
Yeah.
And
The darts are just gone!
Darts are gone. Like at first, like the first shot is like Truman throwing a dart at the billboard and throwing a dart at the dartboard.
He threw a dartboard at the billboard. I understand perfectly.
And the chessboard, but no.
Yeah.
A dart at the dartboard, and it nearly hits like around the point of the bullseye, but it just like bounces off and falls to the ground. You can say something about that. What do you say, Kalil, when the darts are just disappearing off the board that were there in the prior shot?
Production error. I say it's a production error.
I say that this is nonsense.
Not to like complain about Diane Keaton. I think her directing this episode is actually very interesting. The instances of like slow motion, the instances kind of with like the panning shots and the environmental shots are really interesting. But I do think that there's been some production errors in the last couple episodes that maybe have always been there. We just didn't notice them as much.
Yeah.
But between the knife last time and the dartboard this time is much less significant. It's much more minor.
The owls have taken away the darts.
The owls.
They moved them away.
I mean, they are everywhere, right? And we find out at this time that one of the best chess experts in town is over at the Double R, and they're going to go consult him. And we first cut to a shot of Toad.
And I was just hoping, like, oh, Toad, you finally get something. But no, immediately, like, he gets checkmated in the very following
then
second.
It goes over to Cooper, checkmated. Doc Hayward, checkweighted. And we hear this
They've been
cackle.
weighted.
We hear this familiar, lovable cackle. Professor, would you please imitate that cackle?
I don't remember the cackle itself.
Just do your best.
So let's see. I'm Pete. There we go.
Yeah, and so I imagine if there was like a Twin Peaks like Super Nintendo chess game. You like easy mode, you go against Toad. Medium, you go against Cooper. And then hard, you go against Doc Hayward. If you beat all 3 modes,
and
you
then
can unlock...
Big Blue mode.
Big Blue?
Big Blue, the supercomputer chess computer that went against one of the best chess players in the world at one point.
Had that happened by 1990?
Who cares? I think so.
Who cares? I don't know. And Super Nintendo was barely even a console anyway. Maybe Super Nintendo hadn't even happened yet. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if you beat all the other modes, then you unlock Expert Mode, the secret challenger, Pete Martell.
Yep.
Who's able to beat all 3 of those people.
Which, by the way,
at the same time.
Across, from the chessboard, from, where Pete is sitting, you imagine, someone would have their beverage, right next to them, not reach over the chessboard to grab it. So I believe that there is just a cannon where Pete, while, exhausting and checkmating them all at the same time, needs all the energy he can get.
He's got a coffee.
He's got coffee, he's got a big old bottle of cola, and he's got himself some pie. So he's just, chowing down, drinking 2 cups, throwing down pawns and
all
bishops.
You professional gamers out there know how that feels, right?
No.
Hashtag Monster, hashtag Dorito,
Hashtag. So
hashtag Gamer Fuel.
No, we need Pete. They need to represent Pete Martell on those new energy game fuel on Mountain Dew items, just to really show off the true spirit of an expert gamer Pete Martell.
And I think that the Double R might need to get some of that sponsored funding because the Double R is empty outside of these people playing chess. I'm looking at the tables behind.
We know for a fact that unless the characters are important, Toad will always be there to give service. So at the very least, we know that they're in business thanks to Toad.
Yeah, what a backbone of their foundation.
Yes. And by the way, it is mentioned that Pete says that he owes his skill to the great, and forgive me if I forget how to pronounce it.
Jose Raul Capablanca.
Yep, Jose Raul Capablanca. He was a Cuban chess player, actually, and there is something very fascinating by this man just because of how much prowess he did have in the point of chess, which I have to go into the professor's chess corner, if you will.
Has it been remodeled from a conspiracy corner to just a chess corner? Or?
It is both that. I have to rent out at the first part of the podcast a chess corner, and then by the end of the podcast, I've got to get out of the room so I can return as my other self going into the conspiracy corner.
Truly the meaning of Twin Peaks: The Return. We've figured it out. We can go home now.
It is my 2 selves. Anyway, it's kind of
I'm leaning back right now in my chair because it's probably going to be a while.
It's not going to be too long, trust me. Capablanca is very fascinating because he actually did a new variant to chess, actually, the Capablanca version of chess. Now,
where did he get that name from?
Capablanca?
Yeah, how do you think of such a brilliant name for his chess?
Probably himself.
He's making a joke.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay because I'm allowing the influence of him being potentially very proud of himself.
Okay, but if you were a grand chess master, would you name your version of chess after yourself?
Yes.
No, you wouldn't.
Yes, I would do the.
You would name it something
I would
silly.
call this the Professor variant.
That's terrible.
Yes, it was. My last name.
It sounds like you do science experiments on the chessboard. I don't want to see that.
I think that'd be brilliant. But going back, it actually was changing the 8x8 chessboard into the 10x8 board, which incorporates actually 2 new chess pieces to that same board. And it's reflected on both sides, similar to how the kings and queens are placed. So you'll notice that kings and queens aren't reversed on opposite ends of the boards. They're actually perfectly reflected. So you would get the archbishop, which works as a bishop and a knight, and a chancellor, which works as a rook and a knight. Now, Kalil, I know that you don't play chess, but do you see the common thread with these new pieces?
I think if there was a Star Wars themed board, I would want this version because I could have Chancellor Palpatine as the Chancellor.
Overlooking the point, but that sounds brilliant.
You know what I'm saying? There's got.
I know what you're saying. There probably is one, and he's just awkwardly the queen or the king or something. But
all hail the Queen, Palpatine.
It is. It is going to the point that there is a knight theme, and hey, what was the big moving point that we saw from the prior move from the Vagrant, whatever his name was?
Eric,
thank you. It was the move of the knight moving forward onto the board. So I find that move fascinating because maybe we're not even playing regular chess. Maybe that chessboard was just around. Maybe we're playing Capablanca chess, and that was moved in place of the potential archbishop or chancellor. Who knows what sort of intricacies go on the mind of the great Capablanca and what chess we may experience going on. I think it's hilarious. Also, the archbishop and chancellor, like the night have little horsies on them. So I enjoy that. Just a little bit of fun chess knowledge for everyone at home. So forgive me. Yeah, I loved the rabbit hole I went down. And hey, Capablanca feared that the game would stagnate in about 50 years of time and proposed the variation to the solution. 50 years post when Capablanca was kind of like losing his steam and I think maybe died, was around the 1940s. It was around the 1990s where like we saw Twin Peaks. So maybe this is where that stagnant age went through, that now Pete has to usher in the final need of chess.
Speaking of nights, my next section in the notes is called Windermere at night.
At night.
So let's talk about this night.
Yep, so we're going back to the last episode where he's at night, right?
No.
Oh.
We're at this episode where he's at night.
Oh.
Windermere getting his disguise ready, putting on his Mario Brothers mustache, getting his hair and outfit all ready. Leo's writing a letter. Beautiful letter. Mm-hmm. But he seems to be having some trouble with the writing. The shock collar may not be helping with his steadiness in his hand.
No, he's at this like adorable little student's desk and so on, and he's trying to write down like the with a shaky
and we
hand.
Can't quite see what he's writing, so Professor thinks it says "See do marmalade."
No, that's when like Wyndham Earl helps out. Like before he's writing "the," so he gets as far as SpongeBob, and he has that shaky hand is significant because we have to remember Leo just got out of like a coma. Like that he was like got out of thanks to rage. So his mental faculties may not just be fully there, and there's probably a lot of struggle. But Wyndham Earl just kind of comes around and is like, no, you gotta write like this. You gotta really get into it like this. And then the "see-do marmalade" is spelled out because I cannot read that. And that's the only real things we see them write together. Sure. So I think that's the full letter. "See-do marmalade."
And then Wyndham Earl gives him a cookie.
He gives him a little cookie.
And I put in my notes, find you someone who looks at you the way that Leo looks at Wyndham Earl after eating a cookie.
Oh, no. but no, this is an example again of that like manipulation. You get a cookie when you're good. You get a shock when you're bad.
A little bit of Pavlov.
Mm-hmm. And that it's just going to get worse.
A little bit of Pavlov in my conditioning. So that was my riff on Mambo number 5. You aware of that song?
No.
No, it's okay. And then we get a little bit of Donna and Shelley, a little bit of Audrey on the page.
That's in rhyme.
It doesn't have
There's
to.
There's no structure.
It doesn't have to.
I feel like there has to be some sense of rhyme and structure.
No, it's called free verse.
It's free verse, but it's like there's no like feel that I'm getting from this.
I felt something. You can't tell me what I did or did not feel.
I'm saying you are not reaching your audience, and so you have failed.
Who's my audience?
Me.
You don't know that. So we get the headshots on this sheet of paper. And I feel like this kind of reveal would normally be like the end of a lot of it. Like this is an ending kind of feel, right? Like this could have ended the episode, but it actually went on a little bit after it. But we get Donna, Shelley, and Audrey with their headshots. They're going to try to choose a queen. And Leo's like, no.
I love that, but also it does confirm that Leo will not be the strongest piece in his ploy. So that means Leo cannot be the queen. But yeah, he needs a queen, so he's pointing out 3 very interesting options. As mentioned before, there is Donna Hayward, there's Shelley Johnson, and then there's Audrey Horne. And I gotta say, I love the shots that he somehow came across.
I know that when we were watching this together, you asked me kind of which headshot I like the best.
Yes.
And I know we kind of shared a little bit off pod, but let's share on pod too as well.
Yes.
I personally like Shelley's picture the best. I put in parenthesis Instagram pic. It felt very much like trying to go for that sort of aloof, hip sort of, is there a photo happening here kind of vibe. I feel like this would be like printed on like a Polaroid picture, even though it's, way after Polaroid cameras are necessary, like in our time. It feels very, very hip. And then Donna, not her best angle, but it's okay. It's an okay picture, not her best angle. And then Audrey, I put in parenthesis, short hair Audrey is worst hair Audrey. And I'm sorry to offend you. If you personally like that hair, I think Audrey's had better hairstyles.
If you guys have that hairstyle out there, I have to say, you look stunning.
Hey,
enjoy it.
Okay, I'm going to say, I don't know what you look like. But I'll say that Audrey doesn't look good with that hairstyle. You might. Audrey doesn't.
I think she looks fine. No.
She looks fine. And that's what she wants to do. That's fine.
That's fine.
I'm not going to make her my number 1 best headshot just because how she thinks she looks.
Now, here's the thing. When you consider, like, it seems like 3 clear cameras were used, like 3 different cameras.
Yes.
Donna Hayward's looks like a casting shot. It looks like they got the actress's casting shot. It's like, hey, can we use this? Cool.
Yeah.
For Shelley Johnson, it looks like a magazine insider that I would see on a magazine, like at the little end aisles in like a Target, being like, yeah, Shelley Johnson, who is she with? What is she doing? And just like that sort of clickbaity title.
Right.
And then Audrey Horne, it just looks like a shot from the show that we never saw. And so clearly, I have to go with the best quality camera that has dimension, and go with the Audrey Horne pick. That is the best shot. That is the best of these 3 images on that paper.
Maybe what Leo was going no to wasn't the idea of one of them being the queen. It's just like, these are not good pictures. He's just like, no, these will not
Like,
do.
he said no 3 times.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah, he's going to each one. No. Right? and somehow that wasn't the end of the episode. So we actually have the ending here where Cooper... Oh, man, I made a typo. I put Cooper has Evelyn in his wallet.
Oh, no.
Not Evelyn.
Oh, no. The connection.
Caroline. So Caroline is in the wallet, which is, interesting to note.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of Caroline lately.
I really feel, hindsight's 2020, but I really feel that this would have been cool to see in his wallet before the reveals. Like, if we would have saw at a moment where it has his wallet and it shows a picture of Evelyn and we don't know... Caroline, he said both. Carolina, we don't know who it is yet, rather than have all the Carolyn shoved into our faces in the last 2 episodes.
We don't know if she was cast by then.
Right, I'm just saying that's where hindsight's 2020. They
Yeah.
probably didn't have it decided. They didn't have a cast. I just think that if there was like a sense of preparation possible for that, I think it would have been cool to see the picture before we knew the context of it,
I
and then
agree.
could connect the dots.
I agree.
Be like, oh, ooh la la, as we would do.
Sure, you would
Wyndham
do.
Earl also appears, and he's looking very ooh ah la la with his ridiculous accent. Ridiculous accent.
Could you emulate this accent, please, Kalil?
What did he even say?
What did he say, Kalil? How does it feel to be on the spot?
I think he was like, I'm not Wyndham Earl. Is this a postcard?
Please give this
he didn't
letter to
sound like
Audrey
that.
Horne.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
It just clearly sounds like a person who's faking an accent.
Yes, and like even the person behind the counter just like kind of like, you know, that like scrunch face and like wide eye you get when you're like, okay. That was her physical reaction as they both looked onto the various not postcards.
They're not even
pictures.
postcards.
Like
yeah.
you can, like
it looks like postcards, but then when he actually picks it up and you look at the back of them,
yeah, there's nothing. It's just why they just have like the same picture of this very like annoyed owl.
it's not even a good owl picture.
It is a good owl
It's
picture.
a sleepy owl.
If I had to like have an owl picture on my wall, I would want that sleepy owl.
No, you
I
only because
would.
it's in Twin Peaks.
No, because
It's not even that good of an owl picture.
It is the most captionable owl picture I've seen
That
in a while.
owl picture looks better than the 3 headshots. I'll give you that.
I will say that, but that's just because
Well, no, I think the Shelley headshot's better than the owl. I'd rank that one.
I don't see how. I don't see how. I think that as far as the best camera used for a headshot was for the owl.
Yeah, if you judge it by camera.
Yeah, I do. I judge it by the technology that makes things look good. Correct.
Anyway, why would you have owl pictures on a rack? They're not even like postcards. You don't pay for them.
Because
he just takes a
He
sheet
just
of
takes
paper.
one. What happens if it was just like not owls before Wyndham Earl came around? It was just like different like images, like check out this place, this is cool, but they just became owls.
That's a possible thing.
He's just
But
everyone
they're all
loves
looking
owls.
like Grumpy from the Seven Dwarfs.
I
Like,
love it. I love it. I love it.
And then, speaking of Grumpy, Cooper goes up to his bedroom and he sees something on his bed, and he makes this face. It's the same way I'd react if I was in his situation.
Specifically,
If I walked into my room and I saw a creepy, illuminated, glowing-eyed mask on my bed, like, I would do the same thing. I'd just casually walk up to it with a slight concern.
mm-hmm. Well, it seemed that he was ready to touch the mask. Usually myself, I would probably grab something and poke it from afar.
Yeah, exactly. I'd grab like the nearest like broom handle and just shove it over there.
Mm-hmm. And no, it's then triggered a mechanism which started playing a little tape that gave Cooper a nice little vocal message from Wyndham Earl. The first time that he has heard from him in a while. Which, by the way, it seems that it's either a tampered voice recorder that was like Cooper's and just slipped a new tape in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's significant enough that it is a tape recorder in his room with Windermere's voice.
Yes, and also considering some of your theorizing. Theorizing? Yeah, and in the recording, Windermere says that after all that happened in Pittsburgh, I still love her. And I know you do too. Now, Dale, listen carefully. It's your move. Which,
by the way, there's a close-up shot on the mask. What's significant is that it's not even like based on the shadow. The other side of the mask is pitch black.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is pitch white. Mm-hmm. Like the white and black dichotomy. We could say about things like the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, but also for chess pieces. I am completely convinced now that Wyndham Earl is on the white side of the chessboard.
Okay.
Not only is he presenting various white articles with like the white dress, the white pearls, everything white, and he's made like the first move, which is common for the white pieces. It is, and white light coming from his message. Ooh. It is very interesting. Like you could say after Caroline had died, in many ways, Wyndham Earl lost his quote-unquote queen. He lost his wife, and that was quite poor. Some people might argue.
Poor?
It was a poor thing.
Murdering your wife?
Murdering your wife. And usually you wouldn't be able to like attack your own wife, but
usually.
But again, Cooper was passed out at the time. That's still a bit of a mystery. Maybe that she was simply sent out to die, like as one could do from a chessboard. But there's also the very interesting thing that Wyndham Earl is trying to find his queen.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get another queen in chess?
Don't look at me. I played chess one time.
You move a pawn to the other side of the board, in the opposition of the board, and once it reaches the end, a queen will appear.
Okay.
So either you could say one could be coaxing a piece, but I think he's trying to advance pawns forward so that he can find someone to be his new queen in that very interesting sense.
Sure.
I'll go for the sillier one next. We can also see that the light from the little shocker he's got on Leo, yes, is red in its light when it shines onto something, but when you kind of like look straight at the light, straight into it from the first shot, what is it? A white light.
Or it's just a light.
It is just a light. Again, I think that's a sillier one.
Yeah.
But also, it's just the last shot. The last shot, which is perfect. The white mask, when faced with Cooper, is completely black, and his eyes are seeing through it from the other side. Not only could you say something from duality of face, but it could also be a mask worn from a different way, a different perspective, showing Cooper off in this sense of blackness. Again, I feel that Cooper's journey is through the Black Lodge in many sense. So I am heavily feeling that, yes, I'm positive Wyndham Earl is playing white, Cooper is playing black. Someone who could be maybe even just pure insanity or whatever sense of purity we can confirm from Wyndham Earl. More likely, he could be from some sensation or be affiliated with the White Lodge in some way. I find if Major Briggs did go to the White Lodge, the most interesting thing was how kind of wild the surroundings were. It was there was like a jungle-like atmosphere, which you would imagine like something being like pure would be like nice, neat, and clean. But again, purity isn't just one definition. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I think the wild Wyndham Earl is on the white side, while however you will literaise the C's with Cooper to equal black, I think it's fitting for these sides of the board. It is
interesting. As you were talking, I was actually thinking in the back of my mind to what you had speculated a long time ago about white not being good and black not being evil, but so much as purity and impurity, control versus chaos. And there's an interesting conflation happening with your explanation where there's a lot of contradictions.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you're wrong, but it does mean that if you're right, it's messy.
I know another one that can be fitting.
Okay.
We should also think of Cooper playing black. And how does Cooper like his coffee?
White. He likes coffee. White.
He just likes milk.
No, I think you could look at it possibly, and then tell me, this is not my theory, this is playing off of what you're saying. Would it be fair to say that the difference in white and black lodges would be black is doubt and white is certainty? in the sense of Cooper being someone who is plagued with uncertainty, hesitance, doubt. He doesn't believe he can beat Wyndham Earl in the game. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's had so many mixed emotions about Audrey in the past.
No, I think that is fair.
Whereas Wyndham Earl is coming out swinging.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether delusional or not, he is very confident in what he's doing.
He is very certain.
So if we look at certainty versus uncertainty, which is also interesting then for Major Briggs, because when he came back from the White Lodge, he had uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because when he went to the White Lodge, he seemed to apprehend some information and some ideas that was really, it shook him.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he came back and he was led to suspicion from his commanding officers, he began to suspect their reasons, their motivations. So you could argue that maybe with your theory, the White Lodge kind of gave Briggs sort of a lingering perception about confidence and doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So that when he came back, he was able to see the mixed situation of the United States military, United States government.
Mm-hmm. That certainly is intriguing. Again, I find a lot of the stuff that you can just play around with just to be a fun putty.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Yes.
Speaking of fun putty, the
What?
last topic we have is Evelyn, Malcolm, James, and Donna. And I'm not going to explain this. I'm not going to explain that segue at all. I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out for yourself. So we get
Fitting.
quite a bit of Evelyn, Malcolm, and James and Donna in this episode, and they're almost own little side story, which from a narrative position, I think it's interesting. Obviously, Twin Peaks has always been segmented, but you can't get much more separated from the main story than this. It's not connected to the town of Twin Peaks hardly at all. It's just James going on his own little adventure. So Diane Keaton as a director, I don't know much of her other work, but this episode opens up with panning across laterally. Can we say it's a lateral pan?
It's going up the y-axis.
No,
I'm not familiar
it's going
with
across the X.
Oh, it is going across the X and eventually up the Y.
I don't know directions. Anyway, so it's going across the chessboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes to the queen chess piece.
Yep, going up
and
Y.
then it pans up to Evelyn, as you put it, the true queen.
The true queen.
So why is Evelyn the queen? Because I mean, like, if we're going by mixed, like, to me it seems like a mixed metaphor. Because like we later have Wyndham Earls trying to find a queen, right? But the beginning of this episode has the chessboard piece linger on the queen and then pan up to like clearly Evelyn. You can't just like transition that without there being a reason, right?
I think that there is a way to reason out that it's not about trying to put a one-for-one metaphor. It might be, say, for example, making a connection with overall color and what is just intriguing to the eye and what is just playful for the shot. So having a black piece being like shown upwards while then someone dressed in black as Widow is panned up on. That's
it might be
reasonable to say.
aesthetically appropriate, but it does feel symbolically and visually a little discordant in the sense of it doesn't really mean anything. It feels very arbitrary.
Overall, it again, it could just simply be a stylized choice. I don't know about
It's a nice visual choice.
I mean, mechanically speaking, Evelyn could be the queen of her own life, making the largest choices and the biggest moves, while
Is
other
that what
people.
the queen does?
Yeah, no, that's what she has been doing. She's
Isn't
making
the
the largest
queen the
move.
one that hides away and can't not get taken or you lose the game?
No, that's the king.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. No, the king is the one who can only move
the
one space
checkmate's
and time.
the
and
king,
the checkmate.
not the queen. Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, no.
So
that's
the queen
why.
is making moves, making $1 million moves.
That's why Cooper is toying around with the little king piece and so on, just because that is a precious piece whenever it comes to checkmates.
You know who else is a precious piece? James.
Okay, I was about to say you were about to say a different name, but no, James.
James.
You can make an argument.
And Evelyn and Malcolm at the beginning of this scene, they are moving their precious piece around. Malcolm is being talked to by the Andy equivalent of whatever police force this is.
Yeah, he's talking to him about Jim.
Yeah.
James.
Barely knew the kid.
Barely knew him.
Jim.
Jim. I love like he goes like Jim, like he guesses the same name twice.
I would do that.
You can't even do like a second J
I
name.
never related more to Malcolm Sloan than in that moment. And thank God, because now their moment's been good to relate to him. Good there? He just did like the Nigel Thornberry thing from the Wild Thornberries.
No, it's not even that positive emotion. That is like Nigel Thornberry's dying breath because that's my feeling.
Nigel Thornberry's dying breath.
My feeling towards Malcolm Sloan.
That's funny.
There's this point where she corrects him like, James, like, yeah, he was just working around here. He's working on the Jaguar.
You say Jaguar?
Jaguar.
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 It's a Jaguar.
We're saying the same thing. Jaguar.
No, you're saying Jaguar.
Jaguar.
No, you're like Tobey Maguire over here. No. Jaguar.
Roof.
It's a Jaguar.
Bag.
Listener, please send us a message of how you think you should say the word and which one of us is justified in our ways.
Someone is going to see these series of podcasts one after the other and just like have all of these like demanded requests
Honestly,
from us for
that's
like
rad.
Send us sound files, send us like your
If you
testaments and
actually
testimonies.
Dude, number one best fan. Like, we love you all, but like, you would be the best fan if you did that.
We're going to have I feel like there's going to be a lot of people with the expectation of number one fan then. If like,
Yeah, they can
how
all be
many
number
like
one.
number ones can you have?
It's not a matter of number. It's just it's
It's
a
literally
spot.
about amount of number.
Okay,
It is
let me-
in
let
the
me- let me
title.
phrase it, let
It
me
is
phrase it,
literally
let me phrase it.
number one.
You'd be an S rank fan. There could be as many people in rank S, right? Right now, you are an A rank. Everyone who listens to this podcast and has gotten this far into our shenanigans, A rank.
Listener,
They are an A rank fan. But if you want to be an S rank fan, you're going to reply to everything.
Listener, just enjoy what you will in life, and you'll be an S-Rake fan to me. So,
Not
Kalil,
to me. Only half of us will feel that way about you.
but regardless, for the Jaguar,
Jaguar. Okay,
he spells it
Jagwa. Car.
No, he doesn't even like go to A. He goes
Does
J. No, he just goes Jagw, a car.
A car. That's why I got A
Yeah,
in there.
that's why. I love the fact that when like he's spelling it out, it's just like JEW, the JGW, and what letter does he mix up in Jaguar?
The W?
Yep, just you. He mixes up just you.
You're kidding me. You had that set up for this long?
Just you.
If this was me and I had a joke
For-
that good, I would be like over here like freaking out and like foaming at the mouth ready to say that joke. Wow, that's incredible. And then as he's doing that, when they leave, we get the three officers walking real close to each other in single file.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly strange, like centipedal. Is that a phrase? Yes, it is. Centipedal kind of police force there.
Yes.
And Malcolm Sloan's getting a little bit upset with Evelyn because he says, "I'm not sure I can tolerate a nervous co-conspirator."
I can't tolerate nervous co-conspirators. He's like holding and rubbing this woman. It's
Hey, at least they're not siblings anymore.
none of this is helping.
Oh, I mean, it's better. It's a step in the right direction. Like
It's
if
a
they
step in the
It's
deceptive.
already bad. If they were siblings, it'd be even worse.
Kalil, I think that you are just like putting it on paper and convincing yourself. It's not going across the fact that they have been deceiving people behind their backs with these phrases.
It's bad.
It somehow becomes
bad.
better.
It's a scale. It's a moral scale. It gains 3 moral points for not being siblings.
I'm sorry, but when you dig a hole, it's still a hole.
Well,
You can dig.
they're at negative 350 moral points, but there's still a 3-point difference that's been achieved.
Kalil, just follow me here, okay? When
I'm
you dig a
following you.
hole,
Yes.
And you
Is that
put-
where we're all putting all the dolls and the people
Sure.
who like dolls in that hole?
no matter if you put things inside of that and try to justify what this hole is, it still remains a hole in the ground.
Yeah. The
No.
hole can get dug deeper though. You're not going to defeat this.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not being made better. It's still just a hole. You can only get worse from here.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. If they were siblings, you'd be digging the hole deeper.
I think the hole is just. I jump in and I die because that is. I'd hit
Okay.
rock bottom.
Professor
so.
thinks that it's better that they were siblings. He
I don't
wishes they
think
were
that
siblings.
there's any better. I don't think that there's anything we can like weigh here. This is just bad.
Okay, let's move on from this moral question to one of metaphysics, reality. We go to the hideout at Wally's, right? Hideout Wally's.
With
and we
sweet, as you know, Hideout Wally's, great rustic western log cabin feel, just in the middle of nowhere amongst all the pine trees. So tell me, what music do you think that they're playing?
hip hop.
Opera, correct.
Correct.
And we have a whole bunch of people sitting down with little peaked
This is where I'm
hats.
going with this. This is where I'm going with this.
We can go together. We can go to
I was
Hideout Wally's.
leading. I was leading.
Congratulations, I've taken the wheel. And do you see these
You're
people?
not Jesus.
with peaked
You don't look a
hats?
thing like Jesus.
I think I don't know how to respond to that, so
I
I'm
was trying to do like a quote of the Killers. You know that song? Doesn't look a thing like Jesus, but he talks like a gentleman. Since you
I thank you for the
were
compliment.
young. You know that song?
I think no, you should already know the answer to this question. But no, we see a whole bunch of people as this panning shot goes across these gray, maybe one suit wearing men with peaked hats.
Yes.
Peaked hats oftentimes can be attributed to people who are part of any sort of law or military. I believe that I have seen like designs with cab drivers with those hats. It's really hard, especially since the one suit, I don't know how many positions wear like those onesies, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know.
Regardless.
It's so weird. And they're
all smoking cigars.
looking in the same direction
At a wall.
At a wall. Just a wall.
Just
There's
a wall.
nothing they're looking
The
at.
wall at Wally's. It is.
I mean, I suppose that is what it's named after.
It is named after specifically not a man named Wally, but specifically
Maybe
a wall.
they're the Wallies.
Maybe they are the Wallies.
The ones who stare at the wall
are the Wallies.
Are the Wallies.
Yep.
Makes perfect sense.
It all matches up now. And like Donna is like dragging James from like one end of the bar, opposite from the door.
Yeah.
So they were already deep into the bar and just like running across these
casually
Wallies.
And the bartender there asks if they want anything to drink, and they're
no,
like,
no, he asks Donna. He looks at Donna and says, "Do you need anything, miss?" And she's like, "No, thank you."
And then James and Donna are talking, and James says, "You know, if she told me this was all a setup, maybe she'll tell the police that too." James.
Before that, she ends up like trying to like console him. That's like, no, we should call Ed. Like, we need to get out of this problem. And no, he's just like dead set. Like, no, like maybe Evelyn will be on my side.
And it's just like, you know, James, I can almost see why people like you. Like, it's like what Laura Palmer said. Like, he's so sweet and he's so dumb. You know?
Sure.
It's that sense of like.
I can agree with the naivety. I have not seen much sweetness.
It's like he genuinely thinks like, well, she told me it was a setup. There's still good in her. We can redeem her. You're a Steven Universe fan. You know how this usually goes.
Yep. Everyone's going to be good at the end, so that's cool.
Spoilers for Steven Universe. Everyone's good at the end.
Everyone's good at the end, including the Space Hittlers.
It's
anyway.
so sad how that turned out. Well, I guess there's a few people who didn't turn out.
Actually, yeah, there's specifically like two people.
There are a few. Yeah, there's a few. There's a few people.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, they'll have a redemption arc later in some video game or something. But yeah, it's kind of stupid. And Donna's just like, no, let's talk to Ed about it. Which of course James doesn't listen to later on.
No,
but as they're talking though,
and he's like, no, I'm not. We shouldn't do this. And then the bartender comes back to Donna and says, "Are you sure?"
It's just very close to Donna.
And Donna just like lost, like, no. And Donna just goes ahead and just like says, "No, I'm gonna call Ed," and just goes straight out to the payphone.
And while she's on the phone, another officer is uncomfortably close. I know he's like checking in on the phone call, but he's just like just right next to her.
I love it because there's just this point where like, oh, I'm very concerned about James and everything, and as soon as she sees the officer, she's like, "Yeah, you know, it's great to hear back from you, man." It's like, how's it hanging? Just like hiding the conversation. Yeah.
In a clearly not suspicious way at all.
And the officer, Frank, we learn his name to be.
Yeah, because he walks by the other four.
Passes by James, who's playing with, specifically, an umbrella from the bar. So he just picks up from a coconut drink and just, like, plays around with it. He walks past James, and James quickly, like, darts, like, around him. Not really hiding or anything like that. Just, like, I need to get out as this officer goes in. And the Wallies all turn as one unison and goes, "Hi, Frank."
You know, controversial opinion here. No matter what you think of the Evelyn storyline in this series, Hideout Wallies is pretty cool. I like the Wallies. I like the opera music. I like the weird bartenders very insistent on making sure that they don't want drinks. Mm-hmm. It's really weird.
Mm-hmm. No, it is.
And the atmosphere of the place is really strange in general.
It is fun.
So I kind of like Hideout Wallies. Mm-hmm. There's also a stupid owl on the bar too.
The stupid owl comes in on the bar later because we get to see Evelyn getting a chance to drink. And what's inside of her drink?
An umbrella.
An umbrella. Yes. Inside of a big old martini glass, and she just like staggers her way there, puts her drink down, sits down, and Donna chases it after her as an owl sits on the counter, staring straight at
And there's
the
like
audience.
No one else there. It's empty now.
It's empty now. You can see
like the Double R Diner. Sometimes it just empties out.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw like chairs on top of tables showing it's either at closing or past closing.
Time. This is another reference to a. You actually know this one.
I know this.
You know this one.
I know the word closing time, then like the sound afterwards, but I've never heard the song after that. This is what you guys come here for, right?
I hope so. Well, this is why the other people left. Like the ones who are here at least endure it. And they're talking about James, and Evelyn says, James, he was good at 2 things.
Oh, no. She says something before this. This is very important.
Okay.
She says something very important. Like, yes, she'll talk about James, right? Like, she's going to talk about James. That's the whole reason why Donna's there.
Right.
But she does say that overall she is welcoming to Donna. In fact, she offers her a drink. And what does she offer in that drink?
Okay, let me think here. It's not an owl.
It's
not.
It's tiny. It's
not
tiny
ice cubes.
Umbrella. It's an umbrella. It's an umbrella.
A mushroom.
It's an umbrella. It is an umbrella.
It's not a sword.
It is
of
an
any
umbrella.
particular time
It is an
period.
umbrella, and there's a theme of tiny umbrellas.
What does it mean, Professor?
It means umbrella.
It means they had a tiny umbrella drink like set for the prop, and they just keep wanting to use it.
Yep.
Yeah, I have no idea. Then that's very strange. What is the theming of Hideout Wallies? Like Western opera music, umbrellas.
It is the Wallies. The Wallies are the heart and soul of Hideout Wallies.
Yeah. And then they're talking about James Moore, and Evelyn says, James, he was good at 2 things: the car and me. And Donna just like kind of lets that slide.
Kalil, could you describe like what does it mean to be good at a person?
Sexually, like the only way that it makes sense to me is like doing someone in bed, like doing someone.
Okay.
He's good at doing things.
So he does cars.
He makes the car purr and hum.
Oh,
and
no.
also
It's
made
getting worse.
Evelyn purr
Go back.
and hum.
Reverse.
No, you're the one asking me these questions. You can reverse the car. I think she backed up into James. Hey, I'm not. I'm just saying things, okay? You're enabling me. You're actually the bad guy here. But no, I mean, I think it's obviously what it meant. Do you disagree? Like, I took that as very obviously a sexual jab, especially because she knows that Donna and James are like an item. I don't know. Does anyone say that anymore? An item? Is that like a strictly 2000 slang that isn't like not even used anymore in the past decade?
I don't like the term personally, but I don't know if it is a common term.
Well, I know like young people say like they're a snack.
What?
I find that even creepier than item personally. But I'm also an old person by now. You know, like I've accepted that. You know, I'm just withering away. I'm dust in the wind.
The dust in whatever wind and direction you go, it is definitely one that I will not follow.
Oh.
So I'm sorry. Goodbye.
You're not gonna do the opening to the Gilmore Girls, like wherever.
I haven't seen Gilmore Girls.
I will follow. That was a terrible rendition of a very good song. You know.
Okay.
Anyway, Evelyn just dishing out some wisdom, like us. You know, Evelyn is no longer in total youth, right? She has aged a few years, and she says to Donna, "Talk to me in a couple of years when your life is total crap." And then she like later talks like about if there was a reason to climb out of this primeval swill. I feel like the spirit of Benjamin Horne briefly flitted out of the general's body over in Twin Peaks and just took over her in some weird Ghostbusters outtake. And just all of a sudden primeval swill came out of her mouth. Because that was feel like whoa, that was Evelyn saying that. Evelyn's the ones who's like, love isn't wrong, James. I believe in love. Oh my gosh. Which kind of portrays the idea that when she's with James, how much of that is an act? Because I would never have guessed. Okay, like, again, one of 2 things. Either it's just inconsistent writing, or we're seeing a very different side out of her with Donna that we don't see with James. Because with James, she just sounds overly simplistic, naive. I've never said I loved anyone before. And then over here with Donna, it's like this disgusting primeval swill that is life.
I think that there is a face she puts on in front of James that maybe that might be a bit more of the truth she has or the lie she tells herself. I can't necessarily tell you that, but I do not think that it's for the inconsistency of writing, especially with the little bit of conversation that we have later with Evelyn, and wouldn't you know it?
Wouldn't I know what?
It will be James, but we'll get to that in a moment. But before we get to that, we had a fun time with Malcolm because this whole episode, they want us to really not like Malcolm, I think.
And it's so hard because he's such a lovable guy.
He's such a lovable guy as he basically smothers Donna.
I wrote it in my notes as Malcolm bad touch Donna.
Yep. No, he shoves Evelyn, get to the car, throws down Donna, just rubs her, and says hey, no, you're not going to get anywhere close to this. I don't want you around any of this. And he's just, bleh.
Yeah.
Bleh. Yeah.
Bleh.
Bleh.
And the whole time, you know, Donna's just like, don't do this to him, please, and just like sobbing, and I mean, understandably. And we get later Evelyn blowing smoke rings to like this sort of sultry jazz music.
Yes.
Which on IMDb, for some reason, that was the image they chose to represent this episode, was her blowing the smoke ring. It just looks a little silly. And James just kind of busts in. We don't know how long he'd been waiting outside.
Like, it was just like waiting on the other side of the door as she like slowly like got up from her daze and just like throws open the door.
Why'd you do it?
Why'd you do it?
And he says, you better tell me a story, Evelyn, because I'm all mixed up.
It very much, I would say that this is like it feels like a line that comes from one of those like, like anti-drug ads where he's just like, I'm all mixed up on the inside and I don't know how to feel. And then he goes into a dance. But no, instead, during this time, I genuinely think this is one of James' better performances throughout the series.
I was watching a movie recently. It was one of Willem Dafoe's first films. It was called The Loveless. It was a 80s film. And Willem Dafoe is like a young, attractive biker dude who's like in like a 50s biker gang. And that feels like the kind of line that I would get from a 50s biker gang character.
Regardless, hey, he's a biker.
Which, I mean, again, fitting for what James is. It's just weirdly out of place for the situation.
It is, but again, I'm enjoying it.
And James, like, slightly pushes Evelyn, and she, like, launches herself back on the couch, which seems
down.
more work on her part than on his.
Can we also appreciate in this room, there's, like, a painting of just Evelyn alone by the staircase? Like, dining with her husband?
I can appreciate that, yes.
Yes.
And she says, James, you're good, and you're honest. I'm not. But that doesn't mean there weren't moments where I truly wanted you here. Not for Malcolm, not for the money, but for me. For the good and honest way that you taste.
Like whenever I'm looking like at James and like what he's done, I wouldn't call that necessarily good and honest. And there's even like this sort of point where she says that he apparently tastes like that. So maybe that's just her point of reference. Like, he tastes good and honest.
And then James eloquently, I like how you taste too.
Yeah.
And they do a little bit of kissy.
Yep.
Before Malcolm appears with the bludgeon.
Yeah, but he uses the most effective part of the gun, the bottom of the gun, to bludgeon him and make him fall onto the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if Malcolm's goal was just to kill James, just like shoot him.
Yeah, no, seriously, like
Just
he
like
tries
shoot
to
him.
get Evelyn to shoot him, but if like James is the main target,
And he already knew that Evelyn was having doubts. Like, he picked up on that.
yeah, no, maybe he's just like weirdly going chaotic and trying to like silence those doubts in this backwards way. But no, instead he just beats him with a gun, tries to get Evelyn to shoot directly. And maybe like we could go back to like, is their gunpowder on these gloves? Hey, just take like, you guys are in a secluded area in the middle of nowhere. Take Evelyn out to the back after like you have successfully broke her spirits. Tell her to shoot a gun off in the area. Oh, look, now there's gunpowder on whatever you're wearing on your hands. And so there's the evidence. The bullets are inside the body.
Malcolm wears watches in a very strange way.
It's all the way up his arm.
It's up his arm. It's so weird.
Thank
you for pointing that out, Professor. When you were watching, you noticed it.
Malcolm Sloan has been very interesting in these lines. And when like he gets beaten down and when they're trying to come up with some planning, there's some very interesting edits to the audio that we've seen in similar situations where we've seen.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So it goes into like super slow-mo. We get distortion in Malcolm's voice. It's a very gradual effect. I actually really like how gradual it is. It's noticeable, but it keeps getting more and more like lower register. He sounds almost gremlin demonic like after a while. What does it remind you of?
It reminds me of instances with, well, the people we consider parasites, the people who oftentimes are very horrifying influences, especially Bob.
Right, Mike or Bob. So what do you make of this? Do you think that the show was trying to hint that there was a spirit in him?
If you want to believe like the presence of the owl and the fact that they can exist either nearby or outside of Twin Peaks, that could be a potential angle. It could also just be trying to give off that same spirit of just toxic and just horrifying control that he is trying to put on the outside of Evelyn. And who knows, there might just be a perspective just because when Evelyn is being thrown down, like when Evelyn shoots him and is being held on and thrown down, we see that especially intensify, but also clear up as the same speech that Malcolm Sloan told her to give about James. She basically says it almost verbatim, but replaces it more so with the idea of Malcolm Sloan being that person.
Oh, I really do like how that's reinterpreted and reused.
I love that way the line is read. I like the way that they end up presenting it in the payoff. Overall, it's just fantastic scene between the acting and that presentation. It's delicious.
It's a lot to chew on. I'm not as overwhelmingly positive as you are, but I do think it's one of the best Evelyn scenes we've had.
Yes.
And I say Evelyn as far as that plot line, not just for Evelyn, but for all the people involved. I do think it's kind of funny that Donna just like rushes in to James on the floor and doesn't like do anything to like tactfully handle this.
Nope.
She like throws herself at James in such a way where her back and side are turned toward the people that could kill her.
Which, by the way, he then immediately says, "Give me the gun,"
right,
when she comes around. As if, like, again, he couldn't have tried to shoot himself. Like, what is he going to do? Is he going to pick up the gun and use the bludgeoning side again? It's like, okay, Evelyn, let's go over this again.
Yeah.
Now, you have to shoot him. It's like, he came after me and he brought his girlfriend.
There are some issues.
Yes.
And not all of them are even issues, just things you can pick apart. And depending on how much those things bother you, they'll bother you.
It seems like it had to go up to the point that Evelyn had to have the choice. This has to be her final act and her will to what was the fate of James or how he would continue, or her own fate and how she would continue.
I also think what's interesting to think about, too, is that the Evelyn arc has been one of the most, if not the most, soap opera element to the entire series. In the way it's presented, the way it feels. And what I find strange about this is that the treatment of Malcolm at the end with the vocal distortion, the weird slow-mo, but also kind of like, it's like slow motion, but it's like everything's moving fast slow-mo. It's very strange.
It reminds me of the dance. Remember the dance with good old Bob as well as...
It is a different effect, though. But what I find strange, though, is that it does remind us so much of Bob. It does remind us so much of something supernatural. And that breaks the soap opera mold. Like, that is not a soap opera way of handling that. So I feel like it's strangely off for the sort of idea they've been having with Evelyn's arc. That it's interesting to me that they went soap opera, soap opera, soap opera, and then veered it hard left into Bob Mike spiritual territory, or at least in a presentation that's very reminiscent of it.
Yes.
That's curious to me. We mentioned before it'd be interesting to explore Hank more. I think exploring the Evelyn stuff would also be interesting as kind of a side venture at some point.
Okay.
Not committing to anything, but it's something that boggles my mind a little bit of what were they going for? What exactly is the idea here? Because one of the interpretations you can have of Bob, that I believe was in episode 16, I think it's Albert that said it, is that Bob is the evil that men do, right? Bob is the evil that men do. And if we take Bob to be the evil that men do, then Malcolm momentarily taking on that sort of representation makes sense. He's gone Bob mode, right? This is going to be a very silly analogy. Bear with me. I think at this point, listener, you're used to this. But
yay.
There's a video game series called Kingdom Hearts. And in Kingdom Hearts, at least the first game, the rest of the games, they take directions. But in the first game, a lot of the characters, when they start kind of slipping into sort of this dark idea set, when they lose their hearts, the sort of darkness they have, they become what is called a heartless in their universe. And the way it oftentimes represents is that they kind of give in or succumb to that sort of dark presence that then gives them almost like a power, but it takes over them at the same time. So like one famous example in the original Kingdom Hearts is that the movie Tarzan, the Disney movie Tarzan, they reinterpret Clayton as that, where he basically gets taken over for a moment, but then ultimately consumed by that as well. And it reminds me a lot of how, if we look at this episode and Bob is the evil that men do, what happened to Malcolm? He was empowered by, but also taken over by that darkness. The same way Leland is. That parasitism, right? That sort of mutual benefit, but also being controlled, right? You're letting go of the control to get power.
I think that there is always a cautious line that I would always climb whenever it comes to something mysterious that you can chew on and how much clarity should be given forward, because elsewise sometimes it can either continue on the same question with if it ends up tiptoeing too lightly,
Right.
but it also can be dissatisfying if too much answers are coming through. So,
And I would hope, Professor, that when in all of our creative endeavors, whether it's the podcast or a YouTube channel, I would hope that our goal is never to like, here's the answer, explained to you by we people who know the answers.
No,
It's
no,
more
I'm
just
saying
like,
here, share my gum with
yeah,
me.
Here's some ideas.
Here's something I chewed on, and share it with me.
And not to end discussion, but to invite discussion.
Tell me about the texture you feel with the tongue on my chewed gum.
So I like ambiguity, but I also think it's fun to explore it. I don't think that just because we think it should be open-ended doesn't mean we shouldn't try to come up with ideas. Try to come up with conclusions. I think where you overstep the bounds is when you think you found the answer.
Yes, no, it cannot be just the pitch on the wall. It has to be a piece of pitch on the wall.
Correct. And I'm going to pitch you a question, Professor. That was the smoothest transition I've ever done in my entire life.
Oh.
And now that I've
I'm
acknowledged
so sorry.
it's made it a lot worse.
I'm so sorry.
That was a good one, though. You got to admit. That was
I'm
pretty
sorry
good.
that is your best one.
Okay. So I have a wonderful and strange question of the week for you.
Excellent.
So my question is, of the characters in Twin Peaks, which has had the most satisfying character arc for you? I do not mean what is your favorite character, but which character, if you were to imagine Twin Peaks as their story, if you were to kind of imagine this is their story, who do you think's had the most satisfying character arc?
No, I think that if we can, before we do go into this final question,
Absolutely.
it may kill the lead up by the end.
Okay.
There is something that you ended up mentioning to me prior, and that is that the Evelyn and storyline is contested out there.
I would say, ballparking without any like statistics, I would say at least 85% of people who identify as Twin Peaks fans dislike or hate the James and Evelyn arc of season 2.
And we'll go by the perspective that you have had for the experiences you have had.
And-
Just
and
because who knows,
listeners-
there might be that hidden niche in which like rounds it
Yeah.
out way too much.
And listeners, legitimately, I know we make a lot of joke requests, but like actually, if you don't agree that it's about 85%, let me know what you think. Because the sense I've always gotten from like, I'd occasionally look at the Twin Peaks like Reddit or some Twin Peaks groups on like Facebook, it always seems like the discussion around season 2 leans toward the idea that a lot of the arcs that are away from Laura, away from Cooper, are bad. And even some of the ones that are connected are bad. And a lot of people like say when you go into season 2, it's going to be bad. You have to work through it. You have to make it through. It's going to be painful, but work through it. And the one that most often I see get made fun of is James and Evelyn. So if you think it's a little bit different than how I'm saying it, please let me know. I'm actually curious on that.
Absolutely. No, please let us know your overall thoughts and what you have found whenever exploring the community. Overall, I adore the community that I've had a chance to experience. So it has been fantastic. But whenever it comes down to ideas like Twin Peaks, I don't mind all the crazy side stories, sidelines, and even if they don't necessarily feed to what some may argue is the primary plot, whether that is the belief towards Cooper, whether that is the belief towards Laura, I put it in the argument that I enjoy the story of Twin Peaks in general, the people who come from there and what experiences they gain from that or gain from outside perspectives. I made an argument to Kalil a while ago on how I'm not too bothered by Steven Universe being so pushed onto Steven and his journeys around and how there's just so many characters introduced. That's because you're likely going to meet with a lot of people, especially when you travel so far, especially into space, with a character like Steven. And at the end of the day, this is Steven Universe's story. When it comes down to Twin Peaks, for that same reason in the opposite end, instead of calling like Steven Universe like Beach City Blues and you would explore Beach City, this way, we're just exploring Twin Peaks, exploring these lives of these people that the writers and directors found at least significant enough to write and make these stories. And so seeing this arc, I'm just as engaged with any of the other arcs. So with Evelyn and James, that is, as opposed to things like, say, for example, Nadine and Ed, Cooper going with anything with Windermere. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm curious then, which has been the most satisfying character arc?
I would say amongst all the character arcs, I'm probably saying this too soon.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That is obviously
I'm
the
literally
goal.
trying to do this right now
You're
to you.
trying to
I'm
push
putting
them
you
to me.
between a rock and a hard place.
I would say this is single-handedly the hardest question that you have given me so far, whether it's in our talks or the final question. And I realize half our podcast is just who killed Laura Palmer. Then
Thank you.
again and again and again and again.
Thank you for your compliment on my question. I pride myself on causing you agony.
I think my favorite character arc was probably Leland Palmer.
Okay.
Again, it's really is a journey with this man, because our first introduction was hardly even himself. It was a man who was faced with grief and a horrible thing to hear a call on. Someone that you love and know so dearly is now gone. That person is dead. And having to face that grief, eventually find areas of recovery, which some may be more healthier than others, clearly, and trying to take a stand again only to fall yet again, especially in those final moments after realizing it. It was a great tragedy that is known for as Leland Palmer. It is something very engaging that I look forward to going back into the series and seeing it again. And of course, I'm glad on seeing like some characters growing, some characters finding their happinesses. I'm concerned on some characters and how their story arcs will go. But I don't think that I had as much of a, I'd almost call a joyride, swerving across the road, similar to how Leland was experiencing, than with, well, Leland.
Okay. Would you like me to answer my own question too?
Hey, listener, do you want to hear it? I think someone said yes.
Are we doing the Dora the Explorer version of podcasting right now? Oh man, could you imagine?
That's the new format we're going with every time.
For the rest of the whole thing.
So, who do you think who do you think Leo will kill next?
Good. Yeah, so I obviously had a little bit more time to think about this because I knew I was going to ask you this question. So for me, if I had to pick one character arc, I'd say Ben. I would say Ben.
So you say that the person who went through the Confederate arc of winning the Confederate War.
I think it's the most. I think it's interesting.
Okay.
Problematic, and I'll totally acknowledge it. And I think the more I watch it, and the more kind of aware I become of things, the more problematic it seems. But that's again hindsight, and what seemed like a good idea then may not look as good now. But we're looking at it from a different lens and viewpoint.
As we will.
But no, I would say Ben. And to kind of keep it brief, because I know I've gushed at him plenty in the past, I think that he is set up from episode 1 to be someone who has power and command and control, and his sort of grasp of power on the surface that people know about, as well as the power and command he controls behind the scene, where he controls these businesses that are pillars of the community, the Great Northern Hotel being this very clear center of wealth and, I don't know, commerce. Like, if people from all over the world come over here, right? He makes deals with people from all over the world, from Europe and from different countries. But you also have him with One-Eyed Jacks, which is where you take those people from all over the world and you give them entertainment. He controls the underbelly as well as the things you see during the day. He very much controls, the hotel you sleep at night, as well as the place you'd go at night when you're staying up and you're not sleeping. His involvement with so many of these shady characters, but always one-upping them, always having control and command over these situations, contrasted with the complete lack of control of his daughter and his family life and just the instability. The hints we get about his complicated feelings on Laura, where it seems like he was very close to Laura in a way that Audrey, he wasn't. And some of that's good because it seems like he actually slept with Laura. He admits to that.
Yes.
It's like, obviously, thank God he didn't do that with Audrey. But there's another sense in which emotionally, it seems like there's a real tenderness toward Laura that doesn't often get explored, but is in there. So I think, seeing how the way that Laura's death affects people, I think it's interesting to see how it affects Ben kind of in the background. In a way he really can't show his mourning. He can't. And then the stuff that goes on where he actually loses it all, where he actually falls completely. And his redemption arc is the Civil War victory. Like, it's such a strange and interesting way. And I did not say wonderful and strange, for the record. It's an interesting way to handle it. And I think it's really telling and again complex that he had to take up the side of the losing bad guy, right? And try to have them turn a victory over it. So I would say Ben is the most satisfying character arc for me so far.
Yes.
I would have said Bobby probably in season 1 were it not for the ways that I feel that once he got involved with Audrey, and even a little bit before then, he kind of lost that spark for me. I think he lost, and obviously the character himself is lost, but it didn't feel as focused. So I feel like I have some complaints about Bobby's character. And as a runner-up, kind of notably, I would say Catherine's had a really good character arc. The Tojimura arc was also interesting. But for a non-businessy person, Nadine. So I kind of cheated. I definitely have Ben as my favorite.
Yes.
But I do also give props to Catherine and Nadine for having also very interesting character arcs.
Nadine is going to be upset she didn't get first place in this either. And
I know. She's she was disqualified, okay? I can't help it.
Yep. You didn't even place her, so technically you could call her disqualified.
I could.
Anyway.
So, yeah, that I don't know. Are you satisfied with that answer?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Well, any other comments, concerns, or smart remarks you'd wish to share with our listening audience? Or our sleeping audience?
I will give cues to one of the few musical things that I do know, and I will let you know that I did lie, because I will never be satisfied.
What are you talking about?
Hamilton.
Hamilton?
Hamilton.
I have not seen Hamilton.
Listen, if you want to go...
Professor, you can use this against me. I will throw 50 different things you've never heard about. I'll talk about Eminem, and I'll talk about Eminem, and you can always bring up Hamilton to beat me. It's your trump card.
I'm bigger than this, Kalil. I can find...
I'm not, though.
...many things to insult you over beyond music.
I don't know if you can, actually.
I will, and I look forward to doing it later.